Chapter 7:16. Sword Immortal Tian Hen couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. He tried to snatch the golden longsword from Guhan's hand. However, just as Sword Immortal Tian Hen exerted some force, he discovered that his hand was empty. The golden longsword had disappeared without a trace. Guhan had probably placed it back into his dimensional pocket. Guhan, what are you trying to do? Are you going to go back on your word? Sword Immortal Tian Hen snapped. It was as if Guhan had stolen his entire family's fortune. Sword Immortal Tian Hen, who had just decided to reject all of Guhan's offers, was now extremely eager to obtain the golden longsword. Even if Guhan asked him to squat on the ground and bark like a dog, Sword Immortal Tian Hen would probably reconsider whether or not to agree to Guhan's conditions. I'm sure everyone has already guessed that the golden longsword Guhan was offering was the Emperor's sword, the Xianyuan sword, that I Ching had given to Guhan. Since ancient times, no sword pavilion lord had been able to resist the temptation of an Emperor's sword. If he could add a Jiendi to his sword pavilion, then even if he had to give up his life for it, this sword pavilion lord would never regret it. Moreover, Sword Immortal Tian Hen only needed to pay the price of a famed sword maiden in exchange for an Emperor's sword maiden forever. He wouldn't come across such a good deal even after 500 years. How could Sword Immortal Tian Hen not agree? Just as Guhan had said, what he was most afraid of was Guhan going back on his word. He didn't want this deal to go through. I, Guhan, am a man of my word. I won't go back on my word. Guhan pursed his lips. Sword Immortal Tian Hen was no longer the one with the upper hand in this deal, but himself. Of course, Guhan had to take advantage of him. Where's the Yu King Gojin sword? If you don't give me the Yu King Gojin sword, how can I give you the Xianyuan sword? This really is the Xianyuan sword. Sword Immortal Tian Hen became even more excited upon hearing Guhan reveal the name of the Xianyuan sword. Just now, he could sense the immense power within the sword and ascertain that it was undoubtedly an Emperor's sword. However, Sword Immortal Tian Hen wasn't sure which Emperor's sword it was, even though he could vaguely sense that it was the Xianyuan sword based on the patterns on the sword. Sword Immortal Tian Hen knew about this sword. When he had just become an immortal sword wielder, he had gone to see Hao Tianjiendi. Then, Hao Tianjiendi had told Sword Immortal Tian Hen everything that had happened in Changyang Mountain. Only now did Sword Immortal Tian Hen learn that an Emperor's sword had once brushed shoulders with the Yanjing Sword Pavilion. Moreover, it was the legendary Xianyuan sword, the #1 Emperor's sword. Sword Immortal Tian Hen's heart almost broke when he heard this news. He didn't think that the Xianyuan sword would deliver itself to him at a time like this. Guhan, what are you doing? Hearing the Xianyuan sword's name, Ku Rak-in jumped up. He grabbed Guhan's hand and said agitatedly, Guhan, are you crazy? You want to use the Xianyuan sword to trade for the Yu King Gojin sword. Even 100 or 1,000 Yu King Gojin swords can't compare to a single Xianyuan sword. You actually want to use it for a trade? You must be crazy. This deal doesn't count. Of course, Ku Rak-in knew that Guhan would suffer a great loss from this trade. No, it was Yuzhong City that would suffer a great loss. As a citizen of Yuzhong City, Ku Rak-in would never allow such a ridiculous trade to take place before his eyes. This was an Empress sword empress, not some spirit sword empress. Let go of me. I've already decided on the trade. There's no need for you to stop me. Guhan flung Ku Rak-in's hand away and said coldly. Looks like you really are crazy. Guhan, I'm telling you, you don't have the right to make this trade. Ku Rak-in blocked in front of Guhan. You're no longer the sword pavilion master. You don't have the right to make any decisions on behalf of the sword pavilion. It's even more impossible for you to initiate this stupid trade. I'm going to report this to Master Lu Lei and let him stop you. Ku Rak-in, you're mistaken. This sword is mine, mine alone. It doesn't belong to Yuzhong City's sword pavilion. I have the right to make any decision regarding this sword. You don't have the right to interfere. Move aside. Gohan flung Ku-Rak-in, who was blocking in front of him. No. I won't allow you to do such a thing. I won't move aside even if I die. Ku-Rak-in was even more thorough this time. He actually hugged Gohan's waist and buried his head in Gohan's chest. To put it bluntly, if you didn't consider the gender difference between Gohan and Ku-Rak-in, they looked like two young lovers who were having an argument. Lu Shihua. Pavilion Master Lu Shihua. Although I don't approve of you becoming the Pavilion Master, since you're standing in the position of the Pavilion Master, please do your duty. Chase this crazy guy out. Don't let him use our Yuzhong City's treasure, the Xianyuan sword, as a bargaining chip. Ku-Rak-in hugged Gohan. He turned his head and said to Lu Shihua, telling her to stop Gohan. Needless to say, in terms of management, Lu Shihua indeed had the right to order Gohan to end this damn deal. The reason was simple. Lu Shihua was the pavilion master of Yuzhong City's sword pavilion, while Gohan was just an ordinary sword-bearer in Yuzhong City. Moreover, this trade involved the sword Maiden, who was under the jurisdiction of Sword Pavilion. Lu Shihua naturally had the right to order Gohan around, even though Gohan was the previous pavilion master. Gohan, don't be stupid. Have you forgotten? Just now, Sword Immortal Tian Hen agreed to let me synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword. Don't worry, I have full confidence that I can synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword. Ku-Rak-in moved his mouth next to Gohan's ear and bit Gohan's ear. As long as I synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword, it'll be the same as having the Yu King Gojian sword in Yuzhong City's hands. You'll have more than 40 years to negotiate with Yanjing City's sword pavilion. You'll be able to trade for the Yu King Gojian sword at a fair price instead of ruining the Xianyuan sword. Do you understand? Ku-Rak-in's persuasion was very well-intentioned. On one hand, he tried to persuade Lu Shihua to stop Gohan. On the other hand, he helped Gohan think of a roundabout way to save the country. Unfortunately, he had no idea what Gohan was really thinking, what Gohan wanted, or what Gohan's real plan was. Enough. Get out of my way. Sword Immortal Tian Hen finally came back to his senses. He realized that it was very likely that Zhu Luren would stop this once-in-a-lifetime deal. This deal would allow him, Sword Immortal Tian Hen, to make a great contribution. This deal would allow the Sword Pavilion of Yanjing to have its sixth Emperor sword, the Sword Mother. Sword Immortal Tian Hen was instantly enraged. He unceremoniously pushed Zhu Luren to the side. Then, Ku-Rak-in, who felt as if the back of his skull had been shattered, heard Sword Immortal Tian Hen say these words to him. Did you think I couldn't hear what you whispered to me just now? Did you think I couldn't detect your sinister plan? You want to shamelessly detain the Yu King Gojian sword in Yuzhong City and never return it to us, right? I'm telling you, stop dreaming. Sword Immortal Tian Hen humphed coldly. Get out of my way. Get out of my way right now. I won't let you synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword. I, Tian Hen, swear to the heavens right now. You will never touch the Yu King Gojian sword for the rest of your life. Even if you can synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword successfully, it will be nothing but a dream. Just wait in your dreams for this day to come. I. Hearing Sword Immortal Tian Hen's words, Ku-Rak-in felt as if his chest had been smashed by a sledgehammer that weighed several tons. He couldn't even breathe. One could only imagine the pain in Ku-Rak-in's heart at this moment. The Yu King Gojian sword, whom he viewed as his lifelong goal, was forever lost to him because of a single sentence from Sword Immortal Tian Hen. This was like a person's first girlfriend. Because of her father's disapproval, she would never be able to be with him. Later on, Ku-Rak-in wrote this in his own memoirs. At this moment, I feel like dying. If it weren't for the fact that my father's figure appeared in my mind, I would have never fulfilled my father's dream. I'm afraid that in this world, Sword Immortal Sha wouldn't exist. If someone asked me if I would hate Gohan in my heart, I would only say, F***ck them. Phew! Hearing Sword Immortal Tian Hen's words, Gohan finally let out a long sigh of relief. He didn't expect Ku Rakin to cooperate with him like this. He even offered to help him detain the Yu King Gojian sword. He wanted Sword Immortal Tian Hen to fly into a rage and forever forbid Ku Rakin from synchronizing with the Yu King Gojian sword. It wasn't easy to put on this show. It wasn't easy to make someone as smart as Gohan act like an idiot. Gohan wasn't an idiot. How could he really exchange the Xian Yuan sword for the Yu King Gojian sword? Even an idiot wouldn't do such a thing. Actually, Gohan was only putting on an act for Ku Rakin and Sword Immortal Tian Hen to see. He wanted Sword Immortal Tian Hen to say that he would never allow Ku Rakin to synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword. As long as Sword Immortal Tian Hen said this, then Sword Immortal Tian Hen would never go back on his word. Whether it was for his face or for his own benefit, he couldn't go back on his word. Even if Ku Rakin didn't jump out to stop him, Gohan would still slowly guide Ku Rakin and Sword Immortal Tian Hen. To make Sword Immortal Tian Hen suspect Ku Rakin. Just the slightest bit of suspicion would cause Sword Immortal Tian Hen to immediately retract his agreement to allow Ku Rakin to synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword. He would also forbid Ku Rakin and the people of Yuzhong City from ever touching the Yu King Gojian sword. In fact, he might even refuse to allow anyone to synchronize with the Yu King Gojian sword, so that Gohan could keep the Yu King Gojian sword safe until he found severed black hair. Gohan believed that Sword Immortal Tian Hen would carry out this order with unwavering determination. As long as he still had any illusions about the Xian Yuan sword, then he would definitely do it. Otherwise, if the Yu King Gojian sword was synchronized with someone else, what would he use to exchange for the Xian Yuan sword? Chapter 717. Tian Heng. How dare you injure a brother from Yuzhong City? Do you still have any sword-bearer's ancestral techniques? Gohan took advantage of the moment when Ku Rakin was slapped into the wall by Sword Immortal Tian Heng to rush over to Ku Rakin's side. Then, he pulled Ku Rakin into his arms and yelled angrily at Sword Immortal Tian Heng, Senior Sword Immortal Tian Heng. This matter won't end so easily. It looks like we can't continue with this deal. When Brother Ku Rakin recovers, we can talk about this again. After saying this, he picked up Ku Rakin and Lu Shihua's hand. He was about to leave the sword pavilion with the two of them. Humph! You dare to talk about ancestral techniques with me? Fine, I'll have plenty of time to talk about ancestral techniques with you. Mr. Gohan, former Sword Pavilion Lord, just wait for the Sword Pavilion headquarters to issue a summons to you. Sword Immortal Tian Heng threatened. This was Yanjing City's territory. Why would he be afraid of a guy from Yuzhong City? At the same time, Sword Immortal Tian Heng handed the Yu King Gojian sword to a sword-bearer behind him. Then, in a loud voice, he instructed the sword-bearer, lock this Yu King Gojian sword on the 6th floor. Keep it with the sword empresses. Do you understand? The 6th floor of the sword pavilion had always been used to keep sword empresses of the Yu King Gojian sword. It was heavily guarded, especially against the sword-bearers. Unless the sword-bearers were immortal sword tier or above, there was no way they could force their way into the 6th floor. As for immortal sword tier sword-bearers, as long as they asked which sword empress they wanted to synchronize with, no city's sword pavilion could refuse them. They didn't even need to force their way into the 6th floor. No! The half-asleep Ku Rakin let out a heart-wrenching howl. He knew that Sword Immortal Tian Heng was determined to not give him a chance to synchronize with the King of Yu, Gojian Jian. Once the sword was placed on the 6th floor of the Sword Pavilion, unless Gohan really made a deal with the Sword Pavilion of Yanjing, he would never be able to see the King of Yu, Gojian Jian. Seeing this, Gohan heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Everything had gone more smoothly than he had imagined. Sword Immortal Tianhen had actually made up his mind to hide the Go Jian sword, the King of Yu, on the 6th floor of the Sword Pavilion. In that case, unless Sword Immortal Tianhen knew his true intentions, he would definitely use the Go Jian sword, the King of Yu, as a bargaining chip. Even the people of Yanjing City would not be able to communicate with the Go Jian sword, the King of Yu. This was because Sword Immortal Tianheng never would have imagined that Gohan, who had already become a famed sword wielder, would actually want to use Azure Sever to sever the sword mistress within his body. Gohan's true goal was actually to prevent others from synchronizing with the sword of Yu King Gojian. Once Gohan had successfully severed the Juzi sword, Gohan had plenty of ways to force Sword Immortal Tianhen to hand over the Go Jian sword of the Yu King. Things were progressing smoothly. Gohan watched as Yu King Go Jian was about to leave the 3rd level. Just as he was about to relax, something unexpected happened. "Who is it? Who hurt my father? Step out!" At this moment, a young and shrill voice filled with the smell of a Lolita roared in an incomparably violent tone. Sha Sha, who had been wandering around downstairs, had somehow made her way up to the 3rd floor. When she saw her father covered in wounds and blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, she was instantly enraged. F***ck, that Yuzhang bastard really is Yuzhang bastard. He doesn't even know how to raise a child. Throw her out. Since when does our sword pavilion allow children to enter? Sword Immortal Tianheng was also filled with displeasure when he heard Sha Sha's roar at him. He immediately gave an order to another famed sword wielder beside him. The famed sword wielder immediately accepted the order and prepared to pick Sha Sha up and bring her out of the sword pavilion. "Don't touch me!" Sha Sha suddenly revealed an extremely horrified expression. Then, her hair suddenly began to grow, splitting into 9 braids that shot out in all directions like a series of giant snakes. What a familiar battle scene! Seeing this, a name instinctively surfaced in Gohan's mind. He was just about to recite the name when the hair suddenly began to emit a blinding light. Crap, I can't move at all. After the light faded, Gohan discovered that he was unable to move. He couldn't even control a single hair on his body. This feeling was similar to when Gohan had become Gu Xian Yuan and was unable to effectively control his own body. Only Gohan's consciousness was clear. Like Gohan wasn't the only one who couldn't move. Lu Shihua, Lv Hao, the 2 famed sword-tier swordsmen, and even the mighty immortal sword-tier swordsman, Sword Immortal Tianheng, were all frozen to the spot. Their expressions were so stiff that it was almost comical. It was as if they were emoticons used in online chat. They looked like they were crying yet not crying, smiling yet not smiling, mocking yet not joking, angry yet not angry. If they could take a picture of this emoticon and post it online, it would definitely become the best emoticon of the year. Sha Sha, what are you doing? Right now, there were only 2 people who could move. One was naturally Sha Sha, who had caused all of this, and the other was Sha Sha's father, Ku Rakin. Daddy, they're all bad people. If they dare to hurt you, Sha Sha will turn them into stone. Sha Sha jumped back onto Ku Rakin's shoulder, waving her little fists as she spoke angrily. Sha Sha had done this to avenge her father. Sha Sha, you've made a big mistake. Ku Rakin didn't know what to say to Sha Sha. He wanted to give her a good scolding, but Sha Sha had done this for him. She had only done this out of anger after seeing him injured. At the end of the day, it was because Sha Sha loved him. Praise her, what kind of joke was this? She had turned the current Sword Tower Master of Yanjing City and Sword Tower Master of Yuzhang City into stone. This was not a small matter. It was enough for Ku Rakin to be locked up for several years. Sha Sha, will they be able to get out of their petrified state after 10 seconds? Ku Rakin asked Sha Sha as he recalled his battle with Lu Hao. Lu Hao had also been petrified. No. At that time, Sha Sha was in a good mood. She was just playing around with her opponent. Now that Sha Sha is in a bad mood, Sha Sha will turn them into stone for an hour. Let's see if they still dare to bully Daddy. Sha Sha pouted. Good heavens, she actually wanted to set a time limit for an hour. If Ku Rock-in had any evil intentions, he only needed to attack once, and the Sword Tower of Yanjing City and Sword Tower of Yuzhong City would both lose their Sword Tower Masters at the same time. Of course, Ku Rock-in wasn't that crazy. But this also allowed Ku Rock-in to see an opportunity. Because everyone was already petrified, Yu King Go Jiao Jian was left on the ground. As long as Ku Rock-in walked to Yu King Go Jiao Jian and gently picked up Yu King Go Jiao Jian, then his lifelong dream would instantly come true. But if he did that, Ku Rock-in would be breaking the rules of Sword Tower. When Sword Immortal Tian Hen recovered, he definitely wouldn't let Ku Rock-in off. What should he do? This was a choice. If Ku Rock-in stayed here and didn't move, and when Sword Immortal Tian Hen recovered, he might just accept a lighter punishment. But if Ku Rock-in took the opportunity to synchronize with Yu King Go Jiao Jian, then when Sword Immortal Tian Hen recovered, he would definitely give Ku Rock-in a terrible punishment. This was a very difficult choice to make. But Ku Rock-in only took a second to decide. Sha Sha, help me up, Ku Rock-in said to Sha Sha. And so, Sha Sha helped Ku Rock-in free from Gohan's petrified embrace. Just like that, Gohan watched as Ku Rock-in slowly left him, watched as Ku Rock-in got closer and closer to Yu King Go Jiao Jian, watched as Ku Rock-in and Yu King Go Jiao Jian were about to collide. It was very difficult to describe Gohan's current feelings. To put it simply, he was like a bomb that was about to explode. But his body was like a rock that couldn't explode, so what would explode was only his consciousness. After so many schemes and plots, in the end, he still didn't gamble with fate. Instead, he was toyed with by fate. This time, there was no accident, no main character aura, and no peerless expert suddenly appeared to push Ku Rock-in away at the critical moment, preventing Ku Rock-in from touching Yu King Go Jiao Jian. The only thing Gohan could hope for was that Ku Rock-in would encounter the 10% failure rate. Even if he held Yu King Go Jiao Jian, he wouldn't be able to synchronize with Yu King Go Jiao Jian. With a very simple bending motion, Ku Rock-in held Yu King Go Jiao Jian in his hand. Then, Ku Rock-in's body also started to petrify. Sha Sha didn't glow, which meant that Ku Rock-in's body was synchronized with Yu King Go Jiao Jian. Dad, what's wrong? Sha Sha didn't want to petrify you. Sha Sha didn't know about the synchronization process. So when she saw Ku Rock-in petrified, she thought that she had accidentally petrified Ku Rock-in as well. Petrify release. Sha Sha swung her hair, and everyone's petrified state was removed. Sword Immortal Tian Hong went crazy as soon as he was released from his petrified state. He had been tricked by a mere treasured sword wielder, and was petrified for a few minutes. If word of this got out, Sword Immortal Tian Hong would probably become a joke on the forums. Story. Plot. This was something that the proud Sword Immortal Tian Hong would never be able to accept. So Sword Immortal Tian Hong immediately acted. The immortal sword wielder in his hand was instantly released, and it grabbed at Sha Sha at lightning speed. On the other hand, Sha Sha seemed a little weak after everyone's petrification. Faced with the attack of an immortal sword wielder, she couldn't resist at all. She was caught by the immortal sword wielder. Turn her back into her immortal sword wielder form, then seal her. Sword Immortal Tian Hong ordered his own immortal sword wielder. This little girl isn't a immortal sword wielder. The immortal sword wielder sensed Sha Sha's body, then frowned. She's not human either. Could she be a Yuan Ko? Yuan Ko? How could there be a Yuan Ko in Yanjing City? Sword Immortal Tian Hong regained some of his rationality, and he exclaimed in shock. Tian Hong, what should I do with her? The immortal sword wielder asked. Then lock her up like Yuan Ko. And that Yuzhong bastard, who's in a synchronized state, capture him too and lock him up in the disciplinary committee for discipline inspection. I'm going to make him pay. Sword Immortal Tian Hong said with a horrified expression. Let's go. On the other side, Guhan had also recovered. He grabbed Lu Shihua's hand and was about to leave the sword pavilion. Otherwise, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control his impulse and use the immortal sword wielder grafting technique, or just kill Ku Rakin and take the Yu King Go Jian sword. On the way out of the sword pavilion, Guhan warned himself. Guhan, don't be rash. Things aren't over yet. There must be a way to stop this. That's right. You don't care about the Yu King Go Jian sword, you only care about the Yu King. The Yu King is not the Yu King Go Jian sword. The Yu King you care about is only a fragment of the game's consciousness. It's the memories and personality contained in this fragment of consciousness. You still have time. Log into the game immediately and think of a way to separate the Yu King's consciousness fragment from the game. Save her consciousness fragment and prevent it from being absorbed by the real Yu King Go Jian sword. This way, the Yu King still has a chance to live. Chapter 7:18. Unlike other people, if other people were to stand in Guhan's position and encounter the same situation as Guhan, they would be shocked. However, this was not the case for Guhan. One of his greatest strengths was that he could always maintain his rationality and use the calmest state to think of ways to change seemingly impossible things. Therefore, Guhan really came up with a solution. First of all, Ku Rakin couldn't be killed. Although Ku Rakin was a little chunibyu, it was undeniable that he was a good man. Moreover, at the critical moment, he had rushed out to stop Guhan for the benefit of Yuzhong City. Guhan believed that Sword Immortal Tianheng must have guessed that Sword Immortal Tianheng would use the Yu King Gojian sword to retaliate against him. However, Sword Immortal Tianheng still rushed out without hesitation. Not to mention that Ku Rakin had helped Guhan on the day of the trial. Guhan was able to retain his position as the Sword Firmament Pavilion's pavilion master because of his 1 million vote. If Guhan killed Ku Rakin, wouldn't he be biting the hand that fed him? In that case, what was the difference between Guhan and Yuan Ko? Since he couldn't kill Ku Rakin, could he use sword Maiden grafting to steal King Yu from Ku Rakin? It was just like what Guhan had done to Kunzu in the game. The answer was also no. The reason was very simple. It was because the sword Maiden grafting could only be used once in a sword wielder's life. It was absolutely impossible to use it a second time. Otherwise, the sword wielder would die because of the chaos in his Zifu. Guhan had already used sword Maiden grafting on Guyun, so he couldn't use it again. Therefore, after much thought, Guhan only had one solution left. That was to extract King Yu's consciousness fragment from the game. The reason why Guhan had made up his mind to get King Yu's Gojian sword was because of his deep relationship with King Yu in-game. Therefore, what he really wanted was the King of Yu in the game and not the King of Yu in real life, Gojian. However, only after Guhan synchronized King Yu's Gojian sword would King Yu's consciousness fragment return to King Yu's main body in real life. The memories of the two would fuse together, allowing Guhan and King Yu to be together in real life. That was his main goal. Once upon a time, Guhan had neglected this goal. The moment he learned that King Yu's Gojian sword was synchronized by Ku Rakin, Guhan came to a realization and remembered his main goal. Although he understood his main goal, the current situation was still extremely dangerous for Guhan. When Ku Rakin and King Yu's Gojian sword successfully synchronized. Once Ku Rakin logged into the game with King Yu's main body, all of King Yu's consciousness fragments would return to his main body. The consciousness fragment in Guhan's hands was no exception. Although Guhan's King Yu would remain in Guhan's hands, at that time, King Yu would be no different from an artificial sword Maiden without intelligence. The deep bond between Guhan and King Yu would also return to King Yu's main body with the return of the Jade Fragment. As for whether King Yu's main body would retain this memory or delete it, that wasn't something Guhan could decide. However, regardless of whether King Yu's main body would retain it or delete it, it would be an absolute torture for Gohan. Thus, the most urgent thing for Gohan was to think of a way to bring King Yu's consciousness fragment out of the game or isolate King Yu's consciousness fragment. He couldn't let King Yu's memory return to King Yu's main body. As for what happened after that, he didn't have a better idea. Perhaps he could create a virtual game space for King Yu and have his consciousness fragment live in this virtual space. He could enter this virtual space by entering the game and be with King Yu. Although this was a pain in the ass and he still wouldn't be able to meet King Yu in the real world, this was the best solution Gohan could think of. After leaving Yanjing Sword Tower, Gohan immediately rushed to Song Yifei's temporary residence under Lu Shihua's lead. He still had to log into the game at Song Yifei's house and find Tamono Kakashi to isolate King Yu's consciousness fragment. The silver lining in the misfortune was that Jules Vren was sent to the Commission for Discipline Inspection by the Heaven Scar Sword. The Discipline Inspection Commission's cell didn't allow anyone to go online, and it was impossible for the Discipline Inspection Commission to try Wu Dao's case at night. Thus, before the next day, Ku Rock-in definitely wouldn't be able to log into the game. This gave Gohan time to deal with the problem. Gohan had to use the fastest speed to isolate King Yu's consciousness fragment before Ku Rock-in logged into the game. Even if he was a second late, it would be a huge difference. Gohan, you're back. Have you had dinner? I only made some food for lunch. Do you want me to heat it up for you? Song Yifei saw that Gohan had returned and was pleasantly surprised. He warmly greeted Gohan and prepared to heat up the food for him. Yifei, I'm very busy right now. I can't eat anything. Don't worry about me, go do your own thing, Gohan said and left Song Yifei in a hurry. Seeing Gohan's reaction, Song Yifei felt wronged. 2 crystal-clear tears welled up in his eyes and were about to fall. However, before the tear could fall, Gohan returned to Song Yifei's side. Yifei, where's my room? Why don't I see it? Song Yifei's temporary home wasn't big. It only had 2 bedrooms. Gohan glanced at both bedrooms. They were filled with women's things. It was obvious that they were Song Yifei's and Liuyan Ling's rooms. I thought you were going to stay at Ling's house today, so I didn't. Song Yifei panicked and said, Gohan, wait, I'll clean up Ling's room right now. No need. It's too late. Gohan shook his head immediately. He hesitated for a while and asked Song Yifei, which of these 2 rooms is yours? That. Song Yifei pointed at the door of his room. Yifei, I'm sorry. I'll use my room first. You can sleep in Ling's room first. I'll replace all the things that I've used with new ones, Gohan said in a hurry and rushed into Song Yifei's room. Qin Pin, Gu Yun, Tian, and you Juzi, both of you should enter my purple mansion and enter the game with me. After hearing Gohan's words, Qin Pin and Gu Yun, who were rushing into the kitchen, grimaced unwillingly and walked into Song Yifei's room painfully. They turned into swords and returned to Gohan's purple mansion. What's going on? Song Yifei then realized that something was wrong. Something serious happened to Gohan, forcing him to enter the game immediately. But what's the problem? Song Yifei touched his head but couldn't figure it out. Gohan, you're in Yanjing City. King Yu, who was sitting in the room in a daze, was pleasantly surprised to find that Gohan was online. When Gohan went offline last time, he clearly told King Yu that he wouldn't be able to log into the game for a long time because he had to take the armored levitating train to Yanjing City. This was the first time King Yu heard that Gohan was going offline for a long time. He was so happy that he was about to go crazy because this meant that Gohan was going to synchronize with her real body, King Yu Gojin Jian. She finally didn't have to spend the days that they could only meet in-game with Gohan. He could finally be with Gohan in real life. How could King Yu not be excited? However, King Yu was still a little disappointed when he saw Gohan come online. This was because she didn't feel like she was being summoned or attracted. This meant that Gohan didn't synchronize with her real body. Otherwise, the moment Gohan logged in, King Yu's consciousness would immediately be sucked back into her real body. Perhaps I arrived in Yanjing City too late. Guhan will only go to Sword Pavilion tomorrow to synchronize with his real body. King Yu thought of a reasonable explanation for himself and excitedly pounced into Guhan's arms. However, what happened next made King Yu feel a little embarrassed. Other than Guhan, Heaven Enjuzi, the sword lady whom King Yu had met in the past 2 months, also appeared in the game. When Guhan came online more than 10 times, Heaven Enjuzi's real bodies didn't follow and stayed in reality. This was because Guhan didn't need them to come online. He only needed their sword forms in-game. In addition, Heaven Enjuzi didn't seem to like the in-game environment and never took the initiative to ask Guhan to enter the game. Therefore, they were already online and Guhan came alone. King Yu was happy to enjoy the two of them alone and do some shameless things with Guhan. But now, Heaven Enjuzi entered the game. This wasn't a big deal. What King Yu didn't dare to imagine was that there was another Lolita sword lady who entered the game behind Heaven and King Yu. This was the first time King Yu saw this Lolita sword lady. King Yu knew that in reality, Guhan had 2 other sword ladies. They were Qingpin sword and Doyu sword. However, these 2 sword ladies hated entering the game even more than Heaven Enjuzi sword. From the moment King Yu heard their names, he hadn't seen them come online at all. In other words, this was the first time King Yu had seen Qingpin sword or Doyu sword. According to Heaven Guhan's favorite sword lady in reality was Qingpin sword. However, he didn't know if this Lolita ship lady was Qingpin sword or Doyu sword. Chapter 719. The lowly sword lady that appeared in front of King Yu was naturally Doyu Jian. In fact, Qingpin had also logged into the game. However, just like at the beginning, Qingpin was still chained up in the game. He could not transform into the sword lady form in the game, so he could not appear in front of King Yu. Therefore, Qingpin was constantly complaining in Guhan's head. He complained about why Guhan wanted him to log into the game, causing his hands and feet to be chained up. It was so uncomfortable. Alright. Today's matter is a bit urgent. If it's not necessary in the future, I won't let you log into the game. Gu Hai said to Qingpin angrily. The reason why he wanted all the sword ladies to enter the game was because of Tomono Kakazi's orders. On the way back to Song Ifei's house, Guhan contacted Tomono Kakazi and told Tomono Kakazi about his situation. Originally, Tomono Kakazi did not want to care about this matter because it would not benefit him at all. Instead, it would expose him. However, Guhan threatened Tomono Kakazi that if he could not isolate King Yu's consciousness fragment, then Guhan would never log into the game again. He wanted to leave this sad place completely. This made Tomono Kakazi very helpless. She had her plan, and in order to realize it, Guhan had to enter the game. Therefore, Tomono Kakazi had no choice but to accompany Guhan and think for a long time before reminding Guhan of this matter. What happened to Guhan? Why do I feel like something is wrong? When King Yu saw that almost all of Guhan's sword ladies appeared in the game at the same time, he instinctively felt that something big was about to happen, and the source of this big thing might be him. King Yu, something unexpected has happened, but don't worry, I have a way to deal with it. You stay here and chat with Etian and the others, I'll be back soon. After saying this, Guhan suddenly disappeared in front of King Yu. No one knew where he went. This was the second time Guhan came to Tomono Kakazi's residence. It was a Gothic castle and a huge room decorated with cute pink princesses. In this room, Guhan once again saw Tomono Kakazi with an unhappy expression. I'm so unlucky to be your friend. When she saw Guhan, Tomono Kakazi pouted and complained, What nonsense are you talking about? Why should I care about your nonsense? You're so annoying. It's useless to say anything else, Nina-chan. I owe you a huge favor this time. As long as you help me this time, I'll do my best to repay you. Guhan said to Tomono Kakazi very sincerely. Hearing Guhan's expression, the fragrant wind Tomono's grumbles were restrained by quite a bit, and a trace of unexpected caution appeared. This isn't going to be easy. Tomono Kakaze took the Angora rabbit off her head and slowly rubbed it in her hand. Those who were familiar with Tomono Kakaze would know that once Tomono Kakaze took the Angora rabbit off her head, it meant that Tomono Kakaze was in distress. There's no item in the game that can isolate the natural sword maiden's consciousness. Tomono Sasuke spread his hands. Although I was very sure of this, I still thoroughly searched through my database twice for you. Then, I can tell you again with great certainty that there is no such item in the game. Damn it! Gohan clenched his fist. According to Gohan's plan, the best way was to have an item in the game that could isolate the natural sword maiden's consciousness. Then, he would use this item to seal King Yu's memory fragments. First, he would prevent the risk of her merging with King Yu's Gojian sword. Then, he would think of a way to separate her consciousness fragments. Although Gohan was very familiar with the game, he couldn't remember the existence of such an item. Therefore, Gohan asked Tomono Kakaze to search his database to see if there was such an item. Now that the game's core artificial intelligence, Tomono Kakaze, said that there was no such item, it seemed that there was indeed no such item in the game. Hearing this, Gohan's heart fell into a dead silence. This eliminated half of Gohan's hope. Also, you want to directly separate a natural sword maiden's consciousness fragments from the game system. When I heard this request, I was almost scared to death. The shipgirl's consciousness fragments are stored in the game system through a very complicated algorithm. Moreover, it's not that I don't control them, they're stored in a separate electronic container. That container is like a login terminal. All the Sword Maiden's consciousness fragments are stored in that container. It's just that they stay logged in all year round. If you want to illegally separate their consciousness fragments, you must first separate them from that container. Let alone the fact that I can't do this with my current ability. Even if I could, I wouldn't dare to do it. This container is in the hands of that pervert, Xian. If I do anything to that thing, he'll immediately teach me a lesson. He might even reformat my recent memories. I won't take this risk for you, Tomono Kakaze said honestly. Is that so? Then I'll have to trouble you. Gohan's tone was very calm, but the slight tremble at the end showed how excited his heart was. Just now, Tomono Kakaze's words were equivalent to a death sentence for betraying King Yu. Temporarily isolating King Yu's consciousness fragments was impossible. Completely separating King Yu's consciousness fragments was even more impossible. Wouldn't Gohan have no choice but to helplessly wait for Kurakin to log in? Then watch as King Yu's main body takes away his King Yu? What? Our famous military governor is also sad? He knows despair? Tomono Kakaze suddenly revealed a delighted smile. Seeing Tomono Kakaze's smile, Gohan's heart immediately calmed down. It seemed like Tomono Kakaze was purposely teasing him. Either what she said was a lie, or she had other ways to help him. Miss Tomono Kakaze, please don't tease me anymore. You know my time is very tight right now. Every second is very precious to me. If you have a way to help me, please tell me immediately. I'll be eternally grateful. Gohan's voice was a little hoarse and even choked. This made Tomono Kakaze, who was still snickering, unable to continue her performance. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Tomono Kakaze stuck out her tongue. I didn't have a way at first, but for some reason, a way suddenly popped up on its own 10 minutes ago. A way popped up on its own? What did that mean? Gohan was confused, but Tomono Kakaze quickly explained, just 10 minutes ago, when I was checking my database again, I suddenly discovered an abnormality in the system. You don't know, but ever since you logged into the game, I haven't found any abnormalities for more than 10 years. I don't even know how many abnormalities I've found in the past 4 months. Tomono Kakaze looked at Gohan with hatred, as if all these abnormalities were caused by Gohan. However, when she thought about it, it seemed that it was the truth. All the abnormalities were directly or indirectly related to Gohan. I carefully checked this abnormality, and found that it came from a famed sword-level dungeon, but I don't know what this abnormality is exactly. Everything is shrouded in mystery. Even I, the game's core artificial intelligence, can't figure it out. But I've already encountered this situation 2 or 3 times. Every time, it was that big bastard Jatian who dug a hole for me, so I guess that Jatian left it here on purpose. When Tomono Kakaze mentioned the name yesterday, he angrily clenched his little fist, and then continuously knocked the head of the Angora rabbit in his hand. This bitter Angora rabbit was knocked to the point that tears were about to flow out. Then, I carefully checked it 5 times. Among all the codes that I could find, I found 2 very strange codes. After saying that, Tomono Kakaze projected the 2 codes before Gohan. They were 2 strings of hundreds of digits. Unfortunately, Gohan was unable to understand the code. These 2 strings of codes actually represent 2 names. Tomono Kakaze's proud eyes revealed a look that said, "So, there are things that you don't know." The first code says Military Governor, while the second one says King of You. You are so smart, you should be able to guess what this means. What you mean is that this is actually the instance dungeon that I Ching prepared for me. These 2 codes are a hint to me. She told me that as long as I enter this instance dungeon, I will be able to find a way to save King of You. Gohan's expression was very serious. However, there were many indescribable emotions within the seriousness. My guess is the same. Tomono Kakaze nodded her head. However, she immediately shook her head. However, this is only my guess. I do not know what the situation is. You can only rely on yourself. You must enter this instance dungeon yourself to find the truth. I understand. Thank you. Gohan stood up and thanked Tomono Kakaze. It seemed that Gohan had to enter this instance dungeon no matter what. This made Gohan even more curious about I Ching. This heaven-shrouding Jiendi had actually predicted this moment 700 years ago. Then, he had planted the foreshadowing in Tomono Kakaze's body and waited for this day to erupt. After thinking about it carefully, he realized something even more terrifying. Tomono Kakaze had discovered the abnormality in the system 10 minutes ago. She believed that before that, there should not have been any abnormalities in this instance dungeon. This was like a time bomb that was set to explode 10 minutes ago. If that was the case, then didn't this mean that the heaven-shrouding Jiendi from 700 years ago had actually predicted this matter to the minute level? He knew 700 years ago that after 7:42 p.m. on the 21st of October, 3008 AD, he would come for a date with Tomono Kakaze. Thinking about it, it was simply hair-raising. Chapter 720. You're back. Eat something. Seeing that Gohan had returned home, Yuang happily brought out a plate of pastries for Gohan. Gohan picked up a piece of pastry and put it in her mouth. Then, she waved her hand, indicating for Yuang to take away the rest of the pastries, and let her sit beside him. Yuang, sit here properly. I have something very important to tell you. What is it? Is it? Seeing Gohan's cautious expression, Yuang vaguely guessed that something terrible was about to happen to her. Next, Gohan told Yuang everything, including how she tried her best to stop Kurakin, but in the end, she failed because of the mysterious Yuan Ko. While listening to Gohan's narration, Yuang, who was sitting upright, gradually curled up into a ball. She was like a hedgehog that was extremely afraid. Yuang's entire body was trembling. She clearly knew what it meant for her main body to be synchronized by other sword bearers. It's all your fault. It's all your fault, you bastard. Why did you have to stab him with such a heartless sword? Yuang lay in Gohan's arms and hit Gohan's chest. Otherwise, she didn't know how to release the fear in her heart. You bastard, you beast, what should I do? Am I going to leave you soon? I really don't want to leave you. Can you think of a way to let me die? Yu Wang's words were like sharp knives stabbing into Gohan's heart, making Gohan speechless. Yu Wang, listen to me. Things aren't that bad yet. We can still fight one last time. Gohan hugged Yu Wang tightly in his arms and looked at her panicked and lifeless eyes. He said calmly and with a sense of security. Thus, Gohan told her about his plan to separate Yu Wang's consciousness fragment and let her temporarily live in an independent virtual space, as well as the conversation with Tomono Kakashi. Then I won't be locked up in jail. Hearing Gohan's plan, King Yu's expression was a bit gloomy, and I'm going to be locked up in prison for the rest of my life, never to come out. Wouldn't I be even more miserable? Gohan was silent for a while because he understood that things were just as King Yu said. Even if his plan succeeded, King Yu would live in a small virtual space and no longer merge with his main body. That was no different from a prison. King Yu definitely could not leave that virtual space for even a second, or else what awaited King Yu was the shattering of his consciousness. I promise. I'll spend at least 8 hours every day. No, 4 hours. No, 5 hours in the virtual space with you. Gohan squeezed King Yu's hand. From the constant changes in time, it could be seen how extravagant it was for Gohan to spend 5 hours with King Yu every day. That virtual space was not a game world. It could allow Gohan to improve his sword essence in the game. In that world, other than accompanying King Yu, Gohan could not do anything else. To put it bluntly, these 5 hours were completely wasted. 24 hours a day was equivalent to wasting 1/5 of Gohan's life. What's the difference? A cage is a cage after all. Whether you're here or not, it's still a cage. King Yu smiled miserably. You should let me die. Let me end myself right now. Otherwise, once I return to my main body, my current memories and feelings will become an even more laughable joke. Pop. Before King Yu could finish, he was slapped in the face. However, the one who was slapped was not Gohan, but Juzi, who had been silent all this time. You! King Yu touched his face, not knowing what kind of expression he should show. If I have to die, I'll die first. Juzi, who had been as obedient as an artificial sword lady, looked at the King of Yu with an empty gaze. After that, she turned around and walked away. The entire process was a little strange. Juzi's slap was also a little strange. What the hell is this? King Yu could not understand the current situation. He could not understand why Juzi slapped him. I let her down. Looking at Juzi's back, Gohan's face was filled with shame. She's also my famous sword Maiden in the real world. What? King Yu raised his head in shock and looked at Gohan in disbelief. You already have a famous sword Maiden in the real world. I had no choice, it was all for Yuzhang City. Gohan sighed, then told him everything about Juzi's sword. Yuzhang City was facing a life and death crisis. If I didn't coordinate with Juzi, then there would have been no Yuzhang City in this world 20 days ago. My 40 million people would have turned into a pile of bones. I had no other choice. At that time, I thought I could find green hair sever my and Juzi's sword marks, then coordinate with you, so I didn't tell you about this. I didn't expect things to turn out like this. Things in this world really shouldn't be calculated. Gohan shook his head helplessly. Pah. As if returning the favor, another slap landed on Gohan's face. Gohan did not dodge because it was King Yu who slapped him. You idiot, big pervert. King Yu's eyes were filled with tears. You actually wanted to use green hair sever to sever Juzi's sword marks. Do you know how cruel this is to Juzi? You might even destroy Juzi's life. You're worse than a pig or a dog. Someone like you wants to sweep away Yuan Ko and become a hero that saves humanity. Are you worthy? King Yu's words made Gohan even more speechless. Besides remaining silent, Gohan couldn't say anything. Are the three of you acting in a prime-time love triangle family drama? Tian and Gu Yun each held a dozen pastries in their hands as they sat shoulder to shoulder in front of Gohan's group. They nibbled on the pastries while watching Gohan's group perform. In the end, it was Gu Yun who couldn't help but interrupt. Her interruption made King Yu feel awkward. However, it helped King Yu get rid of his painful emotions. Continue. Continue. I'm having fun watching this, hurry up and continue. Etienne poured a mouthful of wine into her mouth, and swallowed it along with the pastries stuck in her mouth. With Etienne's words, King Yu definitely wouldn't continue. Gohan secretly gave Etienne a thumbs up. Then, he grabbed King Yu's hand and walked to Juzi's side. Then, he grabbed Juzi's hand and took a deep breath. His expression instantly became serious and domineering. Let the past be the past. From now on, I won't give up on any of you. It doesn't matter if you're willing or not. King Yu, I will keep you by my side forever, until the day I die. As you wish. King Yu's voice was as soft as a mosquito. Rise from the Ground Instance Dungeon was a relatively unpopular instance dungeon among the famed Sword Instance dungeons. Due to the dungeon's boring content and long duration, the dungeon did not drop many rewards. Hence, this dungeon was not very popular. Aside from a few players determined to clear every dungeon, very few players attempted this dungeon. The story of Rise from the Ground took place 54 years after the Heroes Rise from the Ground dungeon. In history, it was also in this year that Shrouding the Heavens, who had been Jiendi for 10 years, officially announced to all humans that he would build a brand new human base city on the ruins of NC City. He gave this base a resounding name, Yuzhong City. The phrase, rise from the ground, was used to describe the story of a huge base city that could accommodate 20 million people rising from the ruins in a short period of 10 years. When Gohan's vision was restored, he saw a bustling scene. Countless humans were working hard on the ruins. Most of them were only using simple tools in their hands to work. Other than that, Gohan could vaguely see a few excavators waving their giant arms in the distance. Other than that, there were no other heavy construction machines. Is this how Yuzhong City looked like when it was built? If it was not for the fact that the history books had repeated it over and over again, even Gohan would not believe that Yuzhong City was built with such simple tools. According to the statistics in the history books, it was said that in the early stages of Yuzhong City's construction, humans' industrial capabilities had yet to fully recover. They were unable to mass-produce large-scale construction machines. Thus, at that time, Zhetian Jiendi only managed to gather less than 100 construction machines. After 5 years, Zhetian Jiendi increased the number of construction machines to 1,000. According to historical records, in the 4th year of the construction of Yuzhong City, the foundation of this huge base city, which could accommodate 20 million people, was completely built. This was completely relying on the strength of human hand. It could be said to be a miracle in human history. The beginning of the Rise from the Ground Instance Dungeon was the initial stage of this miracle. The scene that Gohan saw was the scene of the first residents of Yuzhong City working hard for their future home. System notification. Player Military Governor, welcome to the Rise from the Ground Instance Dungeon. Quest objective. Help Zhetian Jiendi build Yuzhong City until Zhetian Jiendi is satisfied. Please note you have a total of 40 hours. Within these 40 hours, once Zhetian Jiendi's touched by the sky reaches a basic level of approval, you may exit the instance dungeon. At the same time, you may challenge for a higher level of approval. Your evaluation for the instance dungeon will be based on Zhetian Jiendi's touched by the sky. System notification. Quest 1 has been updated. First time here. Find the person in charge of this construction site and accept the quest from the person in charge. Gain their approval and have the person in charge introduce you to Zhetian Jiendi. Chapter 721. According to the quest's requirements, Gohan needed to find the person in charge of the construction site. In fact, the person in charge was not difficult to find because he was standing in the most conspicuous position. There was a high platform in the middle of the construction site, and there seemed to be something lying on the platform. Gohan walked to the side of the platform expressionlessly. Only then did we realize that it was not something lying on the platform, but a person. But the person's posture was very strange. He was kneeling in a very strange position. His hands were crossed and placed on top of his head like a pillow. His tongue was sticking out and he looked like a dog. Yes, that's right, he looked like a dog because he was originally a dog. Our Gohan's good friend and subordinate, the great U-level Yuan Ko, the Egyptian god of death, the ruler of hell, His Majesty Anubis, was lying on the ground like a dog. Who asked him to be a dog? It was not strange for Anubis to appear here. He was originally Yuan Ko, who was controlled by Zhetian. Gohan remembered that Isis had looked at the entrance of the Emergency Response Center with nostalgia and said that she was the one who built it. So, when Yuzhong City was built, the 3 Egyptian gods had also contributed a lot. Woof! Perhaps sensing that a stranger had appeared beside it, Anubis retracted its tongue and straightened its body. It opened its hazy eyes and slowly looked at Gohan. Human, has Lord Anubis seen you somewhere before? That was the first thing Anubis said. He felt that he had seen Gohan somewhere before, but his memory was a little vague, so he could not be sure. These words shocked Gohan. Anubis had indeed seen him before. Back then, he was the one who had found Anubis in the first temple. But that was something that had happened in the Instance Dungeon and had not happened in the real world. Anubis should have never seen him before, but he felt that he was familiar. Didn't that mean that he still remembered what had happened in the temple? But where did his memory come from? Was it from the hero's rise from insignificance Instance Dungeon? Or did it come from the mysterious reality? Or was this just a trap that I Ching had dug? It seems that the truth can only be revealed when I see I Ching. Gohan glanced at Anubis. He did not expect to get any useful information from the husky. If he could see I Ching in this Instance Dungeon, he might be able to find out more. If Gohan wanted to see I Ching, he would have to follow the system's procedures and complete the quest that the husky had given him. So, Gohan touched the husky's head. Lord Anubis, I'm a sword-bearer from Yanjing City. The Yanjing City Sword Committee has ordered me to help Lord Heaven-Shrouding Sword Emperor build this great city. If there's anything you need me to do, just tell me. I promise to complete the task. Nice. Your touch is so nice. Oh. Unexpectedly, Gohan's action of patting the husky's head made the husky feel very comfortable. Its whole body softly lay back on the ground and whimpered in enjoyment. After all, the husky had the bloodline of a wolf, so it was not strange for it to howl. Lord Anubis, stop joking around. Hurry up and give me the quest. Gohan secretly gathered a small amount of sword energy on his fingertip and stabbed the husky's butt. The husky immediately jumped up as if it had taken a stimulant and looked around vigilantly. Who is it? Who is plotting against the Great Grim Reaper? Ahem. Great Grim Reaper, hurry up and give me the quest. Gohan coughed hard, indicating that he was waiting for the husky to give him the quest. Quest. Let me see what quest I can give you. The husky was very distressed. How would it know what quest to give to Gohan? The quest that he was doing now was given to him by Isis. That's right. The Great Grim Reaper's workers have not eaten bones, no meat with bones for more than 30 days. The Grim Reaper has heard that there is a herd of bison nearby. There are a lot of bison with thick bones. Go and catch 10 for the Grim Reaper. System prompt. Quest 1 has been completed. You have accepted the quest. System prompt. Quest 2 has been updated. Replenish food. The workers have not eaten meat for a long time and their bodies have become weak. Please capture 10 bison and bring them to the person in charge to replenish their strength. Anyone who had played online games would know that this was a very normal quest. Almost all online games would have such a quest. It was a simple quest to kill monsters. Although the Rise from the Ground dungeon was not very popular, There had been tens of thousands of strategy guides posted on the forum over the past 200 years. Before entering the dungeon, Gohan had carefully read through a few of the strategy guides with the highest number of likes. He was very familiar with the general process of the Rise from the Ground dungeon. According to the strategy guides, the Husky would randomly give the player 3 different quests. The player would have to kill 10 bison, 10 boars, or 10 antelope. In short, they were all related to food, which was very much in line with the Husky's character. From this, it could be seen that although the Husky found Gohan familiar, it did not change the normal process of the dungeon. The quests given to Gohan were exactly the same as the others. From this point, it could be seen that the dungeon had not changed. Yuan Ko's hatred seemed to be relative to humans. For animals other than humans, Yuan Ko did not kill them. Of course, there were some Yuan Ko who would kill other animals because they were hungry, but most of the time, they lived in harmony with the animals. Therefore, after the apocalypse, the wildlife resources in some areas were restored to a considerable extent. After some domestic cattle were freed from human control, they returned to the bison of their ancestors and formed herds of bison that were scattered in various areas around Yuzhong City. However, what was ironic was that after Yuzhong City was established, and the area within 200 kilometers of Yuzhong City was once again under control, these bison herds once again disappeared. They either became food for humans, or became domestic cattle in the hands of humans, waiting to be slaughtered. From this point of view, the invasion of Yuan Hen was probably a good thing for animals. Dealing with bison was not difficult for a famed sword-level swordswoman. Any famed sword-level swordmistress could slaughter the entire herd with a few slashes. However, this quest was still difficult, because there was a 5-colored divine cow in this herd of bison. Just from the name, it was obvious that this 5-colored sacred bull was not a simple bull. It was a Yuan Ko, a powerful flood dragon Yuan Ko. Yuan Ko name, 5-colored sacred bull. Level, flood dragon. World of 2-dimensional, Eastern Demon Realm. Instance Dungeon, China Instance Dungeon. HP 4-5 stars. Attack 3 stars. Agility 2 stars. Demonic Power 3 stars. Ability: Bull's horns can launch attacks of the 5 element. Running speed is very fast. When running at full speed, it can reach a speed of 400 km per hour. Ultimate skill: 5-colored sacred light giant horn charge cloud riding mist. Description: the 5-colored sacred bull is the mount of the dragon Yuan Ko Huang Feihu. It is inseparable from Huang Feihu. The appearance of the 5-colored sacred bull here means that Huang Feihu may also be nearby. Please be careful. No one knew why the 5-colored sacred bull would appear in a herd of ordinary bison, but Gohan was not interested in finding out. This was just a quest obstacle designed by the system. Otherwise, it would be too easy to complete the quest after killing 10 bison. Because the opponent was just a simple flood dragon Yuan Ko, Gohan did not take the 5-colored sacred bull seriously. If time allowed, Gohan wanted to release King Yu and use the 5-colored sacred bull to train his sword skills. Unfortunately, Gohan did not have the time. He had to speed up the process of the instance dungeon and find I Ching as soon as possible. He had to find out the secret I Ching left in this instance dungeon and figure out what he should do to keep King Yu by his side. No one knew when Ku-Rak-In would bring King Yu's Go-Jian's main body into the game. Gohan had to seize every second. Go die! The 5-colored divine ox, who was leisurely eating grass, suddenly had its horns flash with 5-colored light. The 5-colored divine ox raised its head in fear and found that there were 5 streams of sword chi flying towards its head. 5-colored sacred light. Of course, the 5-colored sacred bull could not speak, and naturally could not say the name of the skill. It could only let out 2 fearful cries. Just treat it as saying the name of the skill. A 5-colored light shot out from the 5-colored divine bull's horns. If the sword wielder was hit by this light, not only would they suffer a lot of damage, Their bodies would also be affected by any of the 5 statuses, which represented wood, fire, metal, earth, and water. A normal sword wielder at the famed sword level would be at a great disadvantage when facing the 5-colored divine light. Unfortunately, the 5-colored divine light had no meaning against Guhan. Guhan's 5-sword cheese instantly pierced through the 5-colored divine light. Then, it looked at the 5-colored divine ox's body and instantly killed the flood dragon Yuan Shen. Seeing that its leader, the 5-colored sacred bull, had been reduced to pieces, the herd began to flee in panic. Guhan quickly shot out 10 more sword energies, accurately cutting the throats of the 10 strongest wild bulls. The frantic escape caused the blood of the 10 wild bulls to quickly flow out, and the blood that spurted out from the wounds on their necks became faster. In a short while, the 10 wild bulls fell to the ground because of the blood loss. They became Guhan's spoils of war and were put into Guhan's dimensional pocket. When he collected the bodies of the wild bulls, Guhan was somewhat surprised to find that the 10 wild bulls were all cows. There was not even a single bull. Seeing this, Guhan roughly knew why the 5-colored sacred bull had appeared in the herd of ordinary wild bulls. Lust is like a knife above your head. The ancients did not deceive me. Chapter 722. Completing this quest was not as simple as killing 10 cows and bringing them back. The strategy guide on the forum was very clear. Players had to choose healthy cows to bring back. This way, they would be able to gain Anubis's favor and receive a higher evaluation from him. It was said that this evaluation would also be extended to Zhetianjiendi, which would allow Zhetianjiendi's initial evaluation of the players to be higher. As expected, when Anubis saw Guhan take out 10 healthy cows from his dimensional pocket, a smile immediately appeared on his face. He touched the cow's bones and felt the thickness of the bones. He could not help but drool from the corner of his mouth. Very good, very good, very good. Although Anubis's words were directed at Guhan, his eyes were fixed on the cow. Everyone, stop for a moment. Come to my side. Anubis called all the surrounding workers to his side. He pointed at the 10 cows on the ground and said to the workers, "These will be your dinner tonight. You guys eat the meat and I'll eat the bones." Anubis's words immediately moved the workers. What a great leader! Although he did not do much and only slept on the rock. Perhaps it was because he was a leader, and a leader had to be a mental worker, not a physical one. Moreover, this leader knew how to share weal and woe with the workers. He gave the tastiest beef to the workers while he gnawed on the bones. What a great sentiment! Suddenly, the majority of the workers had a good impression of Anubis. This was something that Anubis did not expect. Do any of you know how to cook beef? Prepare the 10 cows for me. Remember to separate the meat from the bones. Do you understand? Anubis could not wait to eat the bone soup. Leader, cooking beef is very simple. We can do it. My family makes Lanzhou beef ramen. A worker who looked like he was from Xinjiang raised his hand and said, "But leader, if you give us a piece of beef, we can cook it. If you give us an entire cow, we will be at a loss. We will not be able to skin and remove the bones. We will need to find a professional butcher." Butcher? Anubis frowned and looked at the workers who had gathered around. There were quite a few of them. Let me ask you, are any of you butchers? The crowd was dead silent. It seemed that there was no butcher among the workers. This put Lalabes in a difficult position. Using his strength, it was not difficult to cut off these pieces of flesh. The difficult part was to completely separate the flesh and bones. Woof! Anubis barked in exasperation, then said to Guhan, "Forget it. You guys can do whatever you want. I'll take you to Zhetianjiendi first." According to the guide, Guhan should follow Anubis's wishes and go to Zhetianjiendi with him. This was Guhan's original mission. However, Anubis had lived in Guhan's house for more than 20 days. During these 20 days, Guhan and Anubis ate at the same table. Guhan more or less understood the husky's taste. Gohan knew that Anubis's taste was very unique. He liked to eat pure bones. If there was even a little bit of meat on the bones, he would not be happy. In the beginning, when Maiden deliberately did not clean the bones, she left a lot of meat on the bones. This was not because when Maiden was lazy. Just look at the menu and you will know that there are no bones in the world. In the end, everyone else ate happily, except for Anubis, who was crestfallen when he saw the bone, his expression unfriendly. Only then did Gohan and the rest understand Anubis's preferences. From then on, when Maiden made bones for Anubis, she would always shave them cleanly, without leaving any meat on them. Let me try. Gohan suddenly walked out of the crowd and picked up the heaven-reliant sword. Immediately, a wave of sword light enveloped all 40 oxen. The onlookers felt as if there were thousands of butterflies fluttering in front of them. In less than 5 seconds, all the butterflies had disappeared, and Gohan sheathed the heavenly sword back into its scabbard. What just happened? The onlookers looked at each other. They had roughly guessed that Gohan was performing a sword dance earlier. However, they did not know why Gohan had performed a sword dance. Could it be that he wanted to see them working hard? Could it be that he wanted to put on a show for them? Good sword technique. Anubis was the only one who had clearly seen Gohan's sword technique. He knew what Gohan had done. Take all the meat away. Then, stew the bones for me. Anubis instructed excitedly. The onlookers responded. They picked up their kitchen knives and prepared to cut the meat. However, they were stopped by Anubis. Why are you still using knives? Just take the meat away, woof. In desperation, Anubis barked again. Did the leader mean that the meat had already been cut? The onlookers were skeptical. However, since the leader had said so, they would do as the leader said. In any case, the leader would be the one to lose face, not them. Thus, the onlookers stepped forward and attempted to use their hands to pick up the meat from the cows. In an instant, all the meat on the 10 cows disappeared, leaving only their skeletons. After carefully inspecting the skeletons, the onlookers found that not a single piece of meat was left on the skeletons. Is this the legendary sword wielder? To think that a sword wielder could be this powerful. The way the onlookers looked at Gohan instantly changed. There was a look of worship in their eyes. In their eyes, Gohan was no longer an ordinary human. Rather, he was like a sword immortal. Good brother, I will bring you to meet Jianjiendi. As Gohan had helped Anubis keep his skeletons intact, Anubis had quietly changed the way he addressed Gohan. That surprised Gohan. Why did he get the feeling that the Anubis in the Instance dungeon was much smarter than the Anubis in the real world? In the real world, no matter how well you treat the husky, it would not give you a grateful look. At most, it would look at you as if you were an idiot. This was the second time Gohan had met Jianjiendi in the Instance dungeon. Gohan had thought that he would be able to see the gentle I Ching again. Unexpectedly, when he saw Jianjiendi, he was no longer Jian. Instead, he was an old man with a stern face and a beard that fluttered in the wind. However, he could faintly make out I Ching's face. This is how Jianjiendi looks like in the history books. Gohan's heart skipped a beat. In fact, Gohan had already expected that the I Ching before him would look like a man. Because that was how she looked in the history books. In the Heroes Begin with Insignificance Instance dungeon, I Ching looked like a teenager. At that time, I Ching was thin and weak. It was not easy to determine her gender. Although it was not worth it, why did I Ching disguise herself as a man? But she must have her own reasons, so in front of outsiders, she would definitely dress up as a man. Perhaps after Anubis left, I Ching would reveal her true appearance. I Ching sat quietly on a rock, seemingly meditating. She did not even bat an eyelid when she saw Gohan enter, as if no one had entered at all. Boss, a swordsman from Yanjing City is looking for you. He said that he is here to support us. Tell him what you need to do. Anubis said to I Ching. Yanjing City is willing to send someone to me. Zhejiang finally opened his eyes and looked Gohan up and down, but there was no change in his eyes. It was as if he had never seen Gohan before. "Alright. Since Yanjing City sent someone to give it to me, if I don't use it, it would be disrespecting the Yanjing City Sword Committee." Zhejiang raised his eyelids. "I don't know when this list appeared in my hands." "Take a look." The list in Zhejiang's hands began to move, even though there was no wind. Suddenly, it floated up and landed firmly in Gohan's hands. Gohan knew about this list. Every player who attempted this dungeon would receive this list. The list listed the tasks that Zhejiang needed players to do for him. As long as a player completed one of the tasks on the list, they would receive a certain amount of favorability from Zhejiang. "You can complete the tasks from 1 to 10 on this list," Zhejiang said. The list was simply numbered, and there was a long list of tasks. There was a total of 60 tasks. However, the rewards of the tasks were not written on the list. Later, the players who studied the instance dungeon discovered that the quests numbered 1 to 10 on the list rewarded the least favorability point. Each quest only rewarded 0.2% favorability point. Tasks numbered 10 to 20 gave 0.5% favorability. Tasks numbered 20 to 30 gave 1% favorability, and tasks numbered 30 to 40 gave 2% favorability. The reward for missions 40 to 50 was 3% favorability. The favorability reward for missions 50 to 60 was unknown because from the beginning to the end, no player had been able to unlock missions 50 to 60. That's right. Aside from tasks numbered 1 to 10, the rest of the tasks on the list were locked. Only when a player's favorability with Zhejiang reached a certain value could they unlock the rest of the task. This was also the reason why mission 50 to 60 could not be unlocked. No matter how the previous players experimented, they could not reach the point where they could unlock mission 50 to 60. Even if there was an extremely overpowered player who used 39 hours to complete all of mission 50 to 50, he still could not unlock mission 50 to 60. The heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor's favorability towards him remained at the level of treating him like an arm. After handing the list to Gohan, Zhejiang chased him away coldly. "Get out now! Hurry up and complete the tasks. Don't waste time here." According to Gohan's original guess, since there was an anomaly in this instance dungeon, it was very likely that this instance dungeon was a backup plan that I Ching had left for him. When he met the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor in the instance dungeon, it was possible that it would be similar to the instance dungeon Heroes Rise from Humble Beginnings. I Ching's consciousness in the game would automatically jump out to help him. At the very least, it would show him something special. To Gohan's disappointment, the process of the dungeon was exactly the same as in the guide. Zhejiang hadn't changed anything. Chapter 723. As Gohan was about to proceed with the quest list, Anubis suddenly spoke up. "Boss, this swordsman's swordsmanship is quite good. He was able to separate the flesh and bones of 10 bison in 5 seconds. I think you should give him a more difficult quest." "Is that so?" Zhejiang looked at Gohan in surprise. Then, he nodded. "Very well. You can complete the quests from 1 to 20 on this list." As a result, the quests from 10 to 20, which required the completion of the 5 quests from 1 to 10, were instantly unlocked. According to the guide, if the bison was strong enough, Anubis would say to Zhejiang, "This fellow has good eyesight." Although the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor's feelings would not change after Anubis finished speaking, the 5 quests that had to be completed would be reduced to 4. This was equivalent to increasing the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor's favorability. Now, however, Gohan had unlocked quests from 10 to 20. This was something that had never happened in the guide. This meant that Gohan's initial favorability was higher than that of the other players. After that, Zhejiang lost interest in Gohan. Gohan tactfully took the quest list and left Zhejiang's room. Gohan looked at the unlocked quests on the list. These quests were no different from the quests from 1 to 20 published in the guide. In fact, these 50 quests were fixed. Regardless of who it was, or how many times they had entered this instance dungeon, the quests on the list would remain the same. There would be no changes. According to his previous experience in the dungeon, if Guhan wanted to find the item left behind by I Ching, he would need to trigger the abnormal node of this dungeon. Before entering this dungeon, Guhan had speculated where the abnormal node of this dungeon would be. The abnormal node of the Wudong Peak instance dungeon was after Guhan kicked the old man off the cliff. The abnormal node of the heroes begin at the end instance dungeon was after he met Black Artoria. So, Guhan speculated that the Rise from the Ground instance dungeon should also have such an abnormal node. Among them, the one in Guhan's hand was the one in his hand. He felt that the quests he received would be different from the quests completed by other players. Now, it would appear that Guhan's guess was wrong. Up until now, Guhan had not received any special treatment in the dungeon, except for the quests from 10 to 20. However, that should be a hidden quest of the dungeon. This was a change brought about by Guhan's help in separating Anubis flesh and blood. It was not an abnormality that existed in the first place. Quests from 1 to 10 on the list were very simple quests. According to the guide in the forum, quests from 1 to 10 would require him to face Yuan Ko, who was no higher than a ghost-class Yuan Ko. Even a sword-class swordsman could easily complete these quests. That did not mean that quests from 1 to 10 were easy. Some of these quests required a lot of time. For example, Quest 6. This quest required Guhan to help 4 workers dig out a foundation that was 100 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 3 meters deep. This was a very safe quest. He would not even be able to meet Yuan Ko. However, this quest required a lot of time. According to the forum, the fastest time to complete this quest was 1.5 hours. That was because the best tool to complete this quest was a sharp shovel. Players could bring other in-game items into the dungeon. For example, a player had brought an excavator into the dungeon in an attempt to drive the excavator to complete this quest. However, when the excavator appeared in the dungeon, Anubis appeared as well. Anubis then drove the excavator away, saying that the excavator was going to be used in a more important place. Even after the player left the dungeon, the excavator was not returned to the player. It was forcefully used up in the dungeon. After some experimentation, the player discovered that the best tool to use in this dungeon was a shovel. Any tool that was larger than a shovel would be forcefully taken away by Anubis. Therefore, players generally ignored this quest. After all, they only needed to complete 6 quests from the 1st to the 10th. This 6th quest, which was a waste of time, energy, and passion, was directly passed by most players. Only those with obsessive-compulsive disorder, the pursuit of perfection, or those who entered the dungeon with the goal of completing all the quests in the first place. Right now, time was the most precious thing for Guhan. The sooner he discovered the abnormality in the dungeon and found the method that I Ching left for him, the sooner he could extract the fragment of King Yu's will. Logically speaking, Guhan should not waste time on this quest 6. However, according to Guhan's analysis, the key to finding the abnormality in this dungeon was on the list. It was very likely that after he completed one of the quests on the list, the abnormality would appear on its own. Therefore, Guhan felt that it was necessary for him to complete all the quests on the list. First of all, Guhan chose to complete the digging mission on the 6. For other players, this was a painful quest that required more than an hour and a half to complete. However, for Guhan, this was actually the easiest quest to complete. According to the hints on the quest list, Guhan found 4 workers who were silently digging. They were waving shovels and silently plowing the ground. However, their efficiency was very impressive. One shovel after another, they dug out a foundation that was 100 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 3 meters deep. By the time they dug out a foundation, it would probably be the next day. "Move aside, leave this to me." Guhan, who did not want to waste time, quickly walked in between the 4 workers and interrupted their work. "Who are you? Let you do it. Can you dig the entire foundation alone?" The 4 workers who were interrupted by Guhan were very unhappy. One of the sturdiest workers scolded Guhan with a northeast accent. Another worker quickly pulled him back and whispered, "Don't be stubborn with him. I've seen this person before. He is the sword-bearer from Yanjing City. The sword-bearer who split the flesh of 10 wild oxen with just a few swings of his sword." The burly man was shocked. His neck shrank back, and his aura instantly weakened. "Sir, how can we trouble you with such a difficult task? Just leave it to us. After all, our lives depend on the protection of an important person like you." One of the workers came up to him in a fawning manner. How could they dare to let a sword-bearer help them dig a hole? "Say no more. This is a quest that I personally requested from His Majesty Zhejiandi. Leave the foundation to me." Guhan glanced at the 4 workers from the corner of his eye. The 4 workers looked as if they had seen hell. They trembled in fear and stood there, not daring to say a word. 9 swords of mysterious heaven, sword in the field. Guhan stabbed the heavenly sword in his hand into the ground, and the only move in the 9 swords of mysterious heaven that could destroy the ground burst out instantly. The workers around Guhan suddenly felt the ground shake, as if an earthquake was coming. Just as they threw away the tools in their hands and were about to run away, the earthquake instantly stopped. What just happened? The workers asked each other in confusion. Then, someone with sharp eyes discovered that a large, deep pit had appeared at the center of the earthquake. The pit was filled with sharp stones. The workers gathered around, and one of them slapped his head and shouted, "I remember now. Isn't this place supposed to be digging a foundation? Is this the foundation that has already been dug? Did you deliberately dig out a pile of sharp stones when you were digging the foundation? This is obviously caused by the earthquake." Another worker said, unconvinced, All right, all of you disperse and do your own things." At this time, Batet, who was pretending to be a cat, appeared out of nowhere and shouted at the onlookers. It was obvious that the workers were very afraid of Batet. As soon as Batet spoke, the workers did not dare to breathe and quickly returned to their post. Only the 4 workers who were responsible for digging the pit were still standing there. "Did you guys dig this out?" Batet took a deep look at the stone forest and then asked the 4 workers. No. The 4 workers hurriedly waved their hands and pointed at Guhan, who was standing at the side, and said in unison, "It was dug out by the sword-bearer." In the end, the worker from the northeast thought for a moment and added, "It was dug out in an instant." "You are the sword-bearer that Anubis praised so much?" Bas took a deep look at Guhan. His eyes were a little playful, but he didn't say anything to Guhan. Instead, he ordered the 4 workers, "Why don't you go and measure the length, width, and depth of this pit? See if it meets the requirements of the foundation." Hearing Bastet's words, the 4 workers immediately ran at full speed. They picked up the measuring tools and began to measure the length, width, and depth of the pit. After a while, one of the workers ran over excitedly. "This sword-bearer is really amazing. It's just right. It's 100 meters long, 10 meters wide, and 3 meters deep. There's not even a meter of error." "That's interesting." Batet walked to Guhan's side and gently patted Guhan's shoulder. His mouth moved closer to Guhan's ear and whispered to Guhan, "Did your father tell you? You look exactly like him when he was young." "My father?" Guhan was silent. He did not know how to ridicule Batet. "Go tell your father not to get involved in this matter anymore. Since he has already left, he should not come back. His Majesty is no longer the Majesty of the past." After saying this somewhat inexplicable sentence, Batet lazily left Guhan's side. "Is this the anomaly node?" Guhan's mouth showed a trace of doubt. "What do you mean by His Majesty is no longer the Majesty of the past?" Chapter 724. Although the standard length, width, and depth of the pit had been dug out, the task was not over. There were clusters of sharp stone awls in the deep pit formed by the sword. The task would only be completed after the entire stone forest was smashed and moved out of the deep pit. Erasing the stone forest was just a matter of a few sword energies. Gohan quickly used his own sword energy to cut off all the stone awls. Then, he instructed the 4 workers to move the broken stone awls out. The northeastern worker was the first to jump into the pit and prepare to move the stone awl away. This northeastern man, who usually boasted of his strength as a Hercules, instantly turned red when he picked up the stone awl and began to exert his strength. These stone awls weighed at least 100 kilograms. The northeastern man could only lift the stone awls slightly before he could no longer support them and dropped the stone awls back to their original positions. "What are you guys looking at here for? Let's help together," the northeastern man said very unhappily. The remaining 3 workers laughed and worked together. With the combined strength of 4 people, they finally lifted the entire stone awl. "How long do you guys think it will take to move all these stone awls out?" A worker looked at the hundreds of stone awls in the big pit and asked with a headache. Thinking about moving all these stone awls away, the worker felt his legs go soft. "Why do you care so much? Anyway, it will definitely take much longer than us digging the pit," the northeastern man retorted. "No. I was thinking that since the sword energy of the sword bearer is so powerful, why not just cut all these stone awls into pieces? We can put them in a basket and carry them out. It will be easier," the worker explained with a smile. "You coward. We have already gotten the advantage. Why are you still selling your D***CK? The northeastern man retorted again. He was about to say something, but suddenly, his mouth opened wide and he could not say a word. It turned out that the northeastern man suddenly realized that a huge stone awl had suddenly floated in front of him. This northeastern man thought he had seen a ghost. Only when he lowered his head did he realize that there was actually a little girl under the stone awl. This little girl was only about the height of his waist. It was obvious that she was still a young girl. However, she raised a stone awl with both hands and easily raised it over her head. She quickly ran past him, as if the stone awl could fly by itself. This wasn't the only stone awl that could fly. The 4 workers were dumbfounded to find that there were 3 other girls active in this big pit. Each of them was holding a stone awl and running with ease, as if the 100-kilogram stone awl was just made of foam. When the 4 workers finally managed to move a stone cone out of the pit, they turned around and prepared to move the other stone cones. However, the pit had already been cleared out. Only a few small stone cones were left in the pit. The rest of the stone cones had all been cleared out by the 4 girls with monstrous strength. "Hey, brother, are these the legendary sword maidens?" a worker whispered to the burly man. "How would I know? The only sword maiden I've seen in my life was Emperor Shroud the Heaven's sword maiden. I've never seen any other sword maidens, but this must be a sword maiden. Otherwise, who would have the strength to do this? I'll leave the rest to you. Once you've finished digging the foundation, report to Anubis. Understood?" Gohan suddenly walked up to them and said, "Yes, sir. Don't worry, sir. We promise to complete the task," the 4 workers said in unison. The most painful and difficult task had already been completed by Gohan. The rest of the work was just a drizzle. There was no problem at all. After that, Gohan completed a series of tasks, such as injecting 50,000 sword essences into the dimensional wall that covered the entire construction site, patrolling the outer perimeter of the dimensional wall twice, and eliminating a group of Yuan-Ko wandering nearby. It took him 4 hours to complete all the tasks from the 1st to the 20th. According to the statistics on the forum, the fastest time to complete the tasks from the 1st to the 20th was 8 hours. Gohan had shortened the time by half. Unfortunately, there was no reward for this, and he did not break any records. He returned to Zhetian Jiandi's room with the completed tasks from the 1st to the 20th. Jetian Jiendi was still sitting there, his face expressionless. It was as if nothing had changed since Gohan had left. However, when he saw the empty task list in Gohan's hands, he finally turned to look at Gohan. "You're not bad. Very good." Jetian Jiendi's reply was quite simple, and there was no change in his emotions. However, from the way he used the words "not bad" and "very good," Jetian Jiendi's impression of Gohan had increased quite a bit. "Now, finish the rest of the tasks as well." As soon as Jetian Jiendi finished speaking, the tasks from the 21st to the 40th, which were originally gray, became white on the list in Gohan's hands. Gohan could keenly sense that this was somewhat different from the guides on the forum. Gohan clearly remembered that there had been players who had completed all the tasks from the 1st to the 20th in one go. However, after they had completed the tasks, they had only unlocked the tasks from the 21st to the 30th. However, Gohan had unlocked the tasks from the 21st to the 40th. This meant that Gohan's impression of Jetian Jiendi had reached the level of treating him like an arm, for the 31st to the 40th. This sounded like a good thing, but it was completely different from the analysis in the guides on the forum. According to the data in the guides, only after completing at least 25 tasks would Jetian Jiendi's impression of him reach the level of treating him like an arm. Even if Anubis's good words had helped him accumulate a bit of Jetian Jiendi's impression of him, it was not enough for Gohan to reach the level of treating him like an arm in advance. "There must be something I didn't notice." Gohan turned his head to look at Jetian Jiendi, who had his back to him. His heart was filled with doubts. Compared to the tasks from the 1st to the 20th, the difficulty of the 21st to the 40th increased exponentially. There were no longer simple tasks like digging holes or patrolling the area. Instead, they required Gohan to leave the dimensional barrier and venture deep into the surrounding ruins to engage in dangerous exploration and combat. In order to save as much time as possible, Gohan did his best to complete every task. He did not even let go of Gu Yun's strength. For example, there was a very annoying fish-catching task. It required the sword-bearer to enter the Gan River and catch a large blue and white fish for Batet. Gohan was certain that Batet had added this task into the list. This cat wanted to eat fish, but it had asked the poor sword-bearer to catch fish for it. The large blue and white fish possessed terrifying speed in the river. It was said that it was faster than a high-speed train at full speed. If a sword-bearer wanted to catch a large blue and white fish, they could only set up a trap in advance, lure the fish into the trap, and then use a net to catch it. The entire process of setting up the trap and luring the fish into the trap would take more than an hour. If there was even the slightest mistake in the process, the clever blue and white fish would immediately escape, not giving the sword-bearer a chance to catch it. To deal with such a fish, even Gohan himself did not have the confidence to do so. Let me tell everyone a secret. Gohan had a huge weakness, which was that he did not know how to swim. Although Gohan would not drown if he fell into the water, he could not learn how to swim no matter what. At most, he could only move bit by bit like a dog paddle. He could not move as fast as he could on land. Therefore, this task was naturally given to Gu Yun, who had an unexpected ability to catch fish. On the day this loli was born, she jumped into the fish tank by herself and caught the blue and white fish in the fish tank. Her love for fish could be seen from this. As expected, when Gohan asked Gu Yun to complete this task, Gu Yun readily agreed. She quickly took off all her clothes, leaving only a pair of pink underwear on her butt. Sigh, the loli's butt is a little shriveled, and it doesn't look sexy at all. Those who can be sexy are all perverted lolicons. We have to hand these people over to the police. Next was Gu Yun's solo performance. After she jumped into the Gan River, the entire Gan River boiled. God knows what she did in the water, but the fish in the river scrambled to jump out of the water. They seemed to be willing to jump to the shore and die of dehydration than stay in the water. After these small fish, The Yuan Ko living in the water also began to become restless. Guhan saw at least 20 to 30 dimensional whirlpools rise on the surface of the river. Each dimensional whirlpool represented a marine Yuan Ko dying in Gu Yun's hands. After this torment for more than 10 minutes, the big blue and white fish in the river finally couldn't hold it in anymore. A big blue and gold fish that was 5 meters long leaped out of the water. This jump was more than 20 meters high, equivalent to the height of a 5-story building. The blue scales reflected a dazzling golden light, but what was even more dazzling was the big blue and white fish's tail. A cute little loli, who was only 1/5 the size of the big blue and white flower fish, was biting down on the tail of the big blue and white flower fish with her little canine teeth. Even though she was only 1/5 the size of the big blue and white flower fish, she looked like she was going to eat the whole big blue and white flower fish into her stomach. Good spirit, Guhan praised. Then, with a wave of sword energy, he pulled the big blue and white fish and Gu Yun to his side. Don't eat it. This is for Batet. Even though Gu Yun was biting the fish's tail, Guhan still forced Gu Yun's mouth open and saved the pitiful big blue and white fish, stuffing it into his dimensional pocket. Batet, I'm going to eat you. Looking at the delicious and super large blue and white flower fish in the distance, Gu Yun let out a mournful cry in her heart. Then, the white cat, who was catching fish in a small river outside Yanjing City, suddenly shuddered, as if it had been targeted by someone. Chapter 725. Is that Yuzhang dude in here? In the prison of the Commission for Discipline Inspection, a man in a well-ironed suit with a body as thin as a bamboo pole came to the door of a single cell and asked the staff member guarding here. Who are you? Why are you asking this? The guard asked cautiously. At the same time, he touched the wall beside him. There was a button there. With a light press of the button, dozens of lasers would pierce through everything in front of the guard. Don't be nervous. Is there anyone in this world who dares to cause trouble in Yanjing City's Commission for Discipline Inspection? The skinny man would smile and raise his hand, projecting a document from his personal terminal in front of the staff member. So you're from the Sword Pavilion. The guard relaxed. You were sent by Sword Immortal Tianheng? That's right. The skinny man nodded. It's good that you know this. You can't tell anyone else. I understand, the guard said tactfully. His many years of experience working in the Commission for Discipline Inspection told him that the laws and regulations were effective most of the time. However, when faced with a powerful figure like a Sword Immortal, the laws and regulations were ineffective. Very good. Sword Immortal Tianheng has ordered that he wants to ask this Yuzhang dude some questions. Open the cell door, the skinny man said to the guard. The bamboo-like man said to the staff. Without saying anything, the staff immediately knocked on a certain position on the cell door 5 times in a certain rhythm, and the cell door opened with a click. Who are you? Are you here to interrogate me? Where's my Sha? Feeling the cell door open, Ku Rock-in, who had been locked up for more than 10 hours, finally saw a living person. He immediately stood up. In his excitement, he looked at the skinny man cautiously. Behind Ku Rock-in was a girl who looked exactly like Yu Wang. However, this girl seemed to be deliberately keeping a large distance from Ku Rock-in. Here. The skinny man didn't say anything. Instead, he took out an object about the size of a pocket watch from his pocket and threw it in front of Ku Rock-in. Then, the skinny man left the cell without looking back. The cell door slammed shut once again. What is he trying to do? What did they do to my Sha? Ku Rock-in foolishly said to himself. He squatted down and picked up the pocket watch-sized thing left behind by the bamboo-like man. He held it in his hand and took a look. It seemed to be an electronic device with a screen inside. There was no other display on the screen, only 1/6 of the circle that kept extending outwards. Why does this look like a communication signal? Upon seeing this symbol, Jules Vren's heart jolted, and he suddenly thought of something. He immediately checked his personal terminal. Sure enough, there was no communication signal on his personal terminal. At this time, the communication signal had quietly become full. This is something that can break through the network blockade and allow me to contact the outside world. Is that person here to help me? No matter what this person's purpose was, if he could get Ku Rock-in to contact the outside world, then he could get help from Yuzhong City, so that Yuzhong City could get the latest news about him at any time. Therefore, the first thing Ku Rock-in did after recovering his communication was to get ready to contact his direct superior, the Dean of Yuzhong University, Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit. However, the strange thing was that although the communication signal was full, when Ku Rock-in broadcast his communication signal, it still indicated that Ku Rock-in could not unplug it and the communication was restricted. Could it be that this communication is aimed at the network? When Ku Rock-in thought of this, he immediately took out a game helmet from his dimensional pocket. After thinking about it, Ku Rock-in suddenly took out another game helmet and handed one of the game helmets to King Yu Go Jianjian, who was standing behind him. King Yu, staying here is too boring. Why don't you enter the game and experience the wider world? Ku Rock-in suggested. King Yu Go Jianjian was silent for a moment. Then, he stretched out his hand and grabbed the game helmet in front of him. One last quest left. It was now the 18th hour of the dungeon. Out of the 40 quests on the quest list, only one was left uncompleted. It was a rescue quest. A group of construction workers from Yanjing City to Yuzhong City had suddenly disappeared when they approached Yuzhong City. The two famed swordsmen who were protecting them had also disappeared. That was why Zhetian Jiendi hoped that Gohan could at least determine whether the workers were dead or alive. If they were dead, then bury them on the spot. If they were alive, then rescue the workers. Without a strategy, this quest was very difficult to complete because the workers were hidden in a very secluded place. Unless a lot of time was spent searching, it was impossible to find the workers. Fortunately, with the efforts of the senior players, the hiding places of the workers had been clearly marked. Gohan easily found the missing workers in a hidden valley. There were originally more than 20 workers, but now there were only 12 of them left. The reason for their disappearance was simple. One of the two famed swordsmen who were escorting them had gotten off the bus to pee. As a result, he was ambushed by Yuan Ko, who was hiding in the bushes. The famed swordwoman did not even have the chance to release her swordwoman before she was bitten on the buttocks by the poisonous Yuan Ko. The poisonous venom was injected into his body, and in less than 10 seconds, the famed swordman was dead. The remaining famed swordman was a good friend and brother to the poisoned famed swordman. He naturally wanted to avenge his dead brother. In the end, after a fight, he died heroically in the hands of Yuan Ko. The escorted workers saw that the situation was not right and began to flee frantically. They were chased by Yuan Ko all the way to this valley. The others either died in the hands of Yuan Ko, or were left behind in the middle of their escape. No one knew where they ran off to. The following plot development was not something that could be described in detail. The poisonous Yuan Ko three-winged sparrow python jumped out when Gohan led the workers away and started a battle with Gohan that was not very thrilling. In less than 10 seconds, the three-winged sparrow python returned to the dimensional whirlpool, and two swordwomen dropped from its stomach. These two swordwomen were man-made. If they were natural swordwomen, these two swordwomen would follow the call of the Sword Garret and automatically fly back to the Sword Garret in Yanjing City. They would not stay in the stomach of this Yuan Ko. Next was the boring process of escorting these swordwomen back to Yuzhong City. Throughout the journey, Gohan did not say a word, appearing very cold. However, the workers were still chattering non-stop. Amidst these gossips, Gohan actually heard something that made him a little shocked. First, these workers were not proper Yanjing people, but some prisoners in Yanjing City. They were sent to Yuzhong City by Yanjing City to work for Zhetian Jiendi, so their words were full of hatred for Yanjing City. and it seemed that they did not know that Gohan and his group were prisoners. The rest of the workers that Gohan saw on the construction site were almost all prisoners in Yanjing City. According to these workers, ever since Yuzhong City started work, 70% of the prison guards in Yanjing City were unemployed. Second, according to all the history books, Zhejiangjiandi and Yanjing City were basically on good terms. There were only some small conflicts and unhappiness, but they were all harmless things. Overall, Yanjing City gave full support to Zhejiangjiandi's construction of Yuzhong City. But according to these workers, the higher-ups of Yanjing City wished that 5 or 6 desolate-level Yuan-ko could attack Yuzhong City's construction site at the same time, tearing the construction site and Zhejiangjiandi to pieces. Moreover, Zhejiangjiandi's image in the hearts of the people of Yanjing City was terrible, as if Zhejiangjiandi had done something outrageous. So, even though Yanjing City had thousands of all kinds of construction machinery, none of them were allocated to Zhejiangjiandi. As for the manpower, materials, and resources that Zhejiangjiandi wanted, Yanjing City had always only given them 10% of the total. Even when a group of people was allocated, they were mostly prisoners in Yanjing City, or some old and weak people who wasted food. Third, and also the point that concerned Gohan the most. According to historical records, this should be the 10th year after the battle between Zhejiangjiandi and Heavenly Court. But according to these prisoners, Zhejiangjiandi seemed to have ended the battle last year and returned from Heavenly Court. Moreover, the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor didn't charge in majestically like what was said in history. He didn't charge in majestically and return with a similarly majestically. He didn't even have a single hair on his body. Instead, he escaped with severe injuries. What made Gohan even more incredulous was that Zhejiangjiandi's Yuan-2 Avicii twin swords were actually broken in this battle. Zhejiangjiandi was no longer Zhejiangjiandi, because Zhejiangjiandi's immortal sword mothers were Yuan-2 swords. He had only evolved the 2 immortal sword mothers into Emperor sword mothers after defeating the Avicii sword's wielder. Therefore, after the Yuan-2 and Avicii dual swords were broken, the heaven-covering Sword Emperor could not even be considered an immortal sword rank sword wielder. Strictly speaking, he was just a spirit sword rank sword wielder. These prisoners also angrily expressed that even if a great grandmaster was reborn, an Emperor sword level sword lady would not be able to repair it. This heaven-covering Sword Emperor could only be a spirit sword level sword wielder for the rest of his life, yet he still had the nerve to shamelessly boast about learning how to build a city from a real Sword Emperor, causing them to die together with him. A broken Emperor sword couldn't be repaired. This was the case 700 years ago, and it was still the same 700 years later. The celestial extinguished sword had been broken for more than 900 years. Countless great grandmasters who led an entire era had spent their entire lives trying to repair this Emperor Sword Mother, but in the end it was all for naught. No one had succeeded. Later on, a great grandmaster suggested that if they wanted to repair the Emperor Sword Mother, they had to use a dimensional crystal of a purer quality. In other words, even Emperor Sword Mothers couldn't meet the requirements of repairing the Emperor Sword Mother. Only by finding a dimensional crystal that surpassed Emperor Sword Mothers could they repair the Emperor Sword Mother. But it took 200 to 300 years to find an Emperor Sword Mother. An existence that surpassed Emperor Sword Mothers. Did something that didn't even have a name really exist in this world? Chapter 726. Gohan did not know whether what the workers said was true or not, but the information in these words could explain many puzzling and inexplicable aspects of Yuzhong City's history. For example, the bad relationship between Yuzhong City and Yanjing City almost started when Yuzhong City was established. The people of Yuzhong City's antipathy towards the people of Yanjing City ran through the entire history of Yuzhong City. This antipathy was passed down from the hearts of the ancestors. Whether it was history books or essays, there were very few records about Zhejiangjiandi. Some of the records were even completely lost, as if they had been deliberately deleted. Moreover, the official description of Zetian Jiandi's greatest achievement, which was the Battle of the Heavenly Court, was even scarcer. There were less than 1,000 words, and the records were very sloppy. There were no details. There was only a rough description of when and where the event happened. After that, there was no more information. As a result, many of the descriptions about Zetian Jiandi's Battle of the Heavenly Court were written by novelists. It was 10% true and 90% false. It was even worse than the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. All these clues gave Gohan a faint intuition that what the prison workers said was not false. What they said was the truth of history. There was another very important question. Why would these workers say this to him? When other players completed the dungeon, these prison workers definitely did not talk about this topic. Otherwise, such explosive news would not have caused a stir on the forum. This information could almost completely overturn the historical image of Zetian Jiendi. It was equivalent to reshaping the history in people's hearts. The waves it would cause would definitely be huge. At least the people of Yuzhong City would never accept this. So, Gohan could almost say with certainty that all the players who had experienced this dungeon had never heard these prison workers say these words. In other words, these words were actually said specifically for Gohan. They were said specifically for Gohan to hear. Yes, this should be the mutated node, Gohan said with certainty. He knew that from this moment on, the direction of the whole dungeon would be different. Without any twists and turns, Gohan brought the remaining 12 workers back to the Yuzhong City construction site and handed them over to Bast. He also handed over the completed tasks to Bast. Very good. You can go look for the boss now. Bast didn't seem to check the status of the mission in detail. He only glanced at the mission items that Gohan handed over, and the mission list for mission numbers 20 to 40 were all completed. I'll make a move first, Lord Bast, Gohan said to Bast as he prepared to go find Shroud Heaven Jiendi. If I were you, I would leave here immediately. Seeing Gohan turn around, Batet suddenly said such an inexplicable sentence, and the hidden meaning in this sentence made Gohan's body tremble unconsciously. What is this Bast trying to tell me? Could it be that Shroud Heaven Jiendi? Gohan thought worriedly. She looked at the heartless sword maidens beside her, and suddenly realized that Gu Yun's expression was a little strange, as if she was constantly avoiding her gaze. Gohan's heart skipped a beat, and she immediately looked into her dimensional pocket. Sure enough, the huge blue and white flower fish was happily jumping in her dimensional pocket. Gohan clearly remembered that she had taken out the big blue and white flower fish when she handed over the mission, but it was still in her dimensional pocket at this moment. It was obvious that someone had secretly sent it back. Others naturally couldn't control her dimensional pocket, and only the sword maidens who were telepathically connected to her could send things from the outside into her dimensional pocket. It must be that Gu Yun couldn't bear to give the big blue and white flower fish to Bast to eat, so she had secretly kept the big blue and white flower fish. Gohan picked up the mission list in her hand, and deliberately looked at the mission for the big blue and white flower fish. It clearly showed that the mission had been completed. The mission had been completed, but the key item for the mission was still in her hands. This was a little strange. Was this Bast's negligence? Or was he doing it on purpose? Gohan hid all these things in her heart, and with a heart full of doubts, she entered Shroud Heaven Jiendi's house again. At this time, Shroud Heaven Jiendi was not meditating, but looking at the 8 trigrams in the room, lost in thought. Your Majesty, I have completed missions 20 to 40, Gohan said very respectfully to Shroud Heaven Jiendi. Good, very good, I knew that these missions wouldn't be difficult for you. Shroud Heaven Jiendi turned around, an inscrutable smile on his face. You've been in Yuzhong City for almost a day. It's been hard on you this whole day, and you've been completing the missions. As expected, Shroud Heaven Jiendi's favorability had reached a new level. Otherwise, there was no way Shroud Heaven Jiendi would say such words of concern. This was completely different from the Shroud Heaven Jiendi that Gohan had met at the beginning of the dungeon. You've been working hard for almost a day, so you don't have to rush to finish the rest of the mission. Just sleep here. Shroud Heaven Jiendi generously gave his bed to Gohan, and gestured for Gohan to sleep on his bed. Unfortunately, Gohan was in no mood to sleep. He shook his head, then said to Shroud Heaven Jiendi, "Building Yuzhong City is more important. Your Majesty, if you have any other missions, you can give them to me. I will definitely complete them as soon as possible." What a good boy! Shroud Heaven Jiendi was even more satisfied with Gohan. "In that case, go and complete the last mission for me." The last mission? Aren't there supposed to be 10 missions? Over the past 200 years, there had never been a sword-bearer who could unlock the 40th to 50th quests, but they were unlocked by Gohan. He had thought that these 10 quests would be as the guesses of the guides on the forums, 10 extremely difficult quests. However, when Gohan took a closer look at the 10 missions, he was shocked to discover that these 10 missions were actually one mission. Although this mission took up 10 serial numbers, the descriptive text behind each serial number was exactly the same. Repair the broken Yuan Killers of Ichi Sword. Help Shroud Heaven Jiendi repair the broken Yuan Killers of Ichi Sword. This mission actually required Gohan to repair the broken Yuan Killers of Ichi Sword. This was something no Grandmaster had been able to do in the past 800 years, and Shroud Heaven Jiendi actually wanted Gohan to repair it. Go and find Anubis now. He will tell you what to do. Yesterday, Jiendi had gone back to silence after saying that. Gohan knew that Shroud Heaven Jiendi would not say anything to him. At the same time, Gohan found that there was a new change on the mission list. After number 41, the words, "Repair the broken Yuan Killers of Ichi Sword," "Help Shroud Heaven Jiendi repair the broken Yuan Killers of Ichi Sword," had quietly changed to "Find Anubis and get Anubis's guidance." It turned out that the 10 missions from 41 to 50 were actually the 10 submissions of the last super mission. If all 10 submissions were completed, the entire Yuan Killers of Ichi Sword would be completed. There was nothing more to say. Gohan turned around and left the hut to find Anubis. When Gohan found Anubis, the husky was hiding in a corner, happily gnawing on a large bison leg bone. The bison bone was as hard as steel, but in Anubis's mouth, it was as crisp as sugar cane. It was easily chewed and swallowed. "Master Anubis, His Majesty Shroud Heaven asked me to find you," Gohan said to Anubis. Anubis did not seem to hear Gohan's words. Once he was done, he continued to chew on his own bones. Soon, he had swallowed the entire bison bone into his stomach. The size of his stomach did not change at all. It was as if there was a dimensional pocket hidden within his stomach. "Master Anubis, His Majesty Shroud Heaven asked me to find you." Just as Anubis was about to chew on the bones of the second bison, the sense of urgency finally forced Gohan to stop Anubis from eating. Gohan stood in front of Anubis to block him. It had been more than 18 hours since Gohan entered the instance dungeon. The clock should be around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. The Yanjing City Disciplinary Committee had already begun to deal with Ku Rakin. The Howling Tiger Sword Spirit should have also begun to rescue Ku Rakin. Logically speaking, Jules Verne should be locked up in the prison of the Commission for discipline inspection for a few days or even a week or two after he petrified the pavilion master of the Sword Tower in Yanjing. However, Jules Verne did not actually commit any major mistakes. Synchronizing and coordinating his own sword lady was something that the Sword Tower of Yanjing City should cooperate with the sword bearer. As long as the Roaring Tiger Sword Spirit argued for what was right and handled it properly, Jules Verne might even be released on bail today. Once Ku Rakin was released from the prison, he could enter the game at any time. When that happened, Yu Wang's consciousness would immediately leave him. So, Gohan could not waste even a second. Woof! Anubis could not avoid it. He stood up helplessly and looked at Gohan with a face covered in dust. There was a pleading look in his eyes, as if he was begging Gohan not to stop him from eating. Master Anubis, His Majesty Shroud Heaven hopes that I can help him repair the broken Yuan 2 Avicii sword. So, he asked me to find you. What should I do now? Although he did not understand why Anubis would beg him for a few bones, he had to complete the quest. Woof, woof, woof. Anubis barked 3 times in a row. The 3 barks seemed to contain different emotions. It was as if there was an increasing sense of despair. After the 3 barks ended, Anubis, who was originally in human form, suddenly transformed into a husky. Anubis then dashed towards an unknown direction with the speed of the wind. Chapter 727. After all, Anubis was a universe-level Yuan Ko. When a universe-level Yuan Ko ran at full speed, even if Gohan's strength was a few times or even a dozen times stronger than an ordinary famed sword-level swordsman, he still wouldn't be able to catch up to him. Soon, the husky would disappear without a trace. However, in less than a few minutes, Gohan managed to catch up to the husky that was running away with all its might. However, it wasn't because Gohan was fast enough, but because the husky was getting slower and slower. Finally, it collapsed on the ground, motionless and panting as if it was about to die. Master Anubis, what's wrong? Gohan went up to Anubis with concern and gently stroked its furry head. Woof, woof, woof. Anubis only barked weakly. No matter how much Gohan tried to persuade it, it still refused to say a word. Such a stalemate made Gohan more and more anxious. Stupid dog, just tell him. Don't joke around with your life. Bast suddenly appeared out of nowhere and walked to the side of Gohan and Anubis. He said to Anubis with a bitter smile. Woof, woof, woof. Anubis barked 3 more times. These 3 simple barks made Bast nod repeatedly, as if it was communicating in dog language. Woof. Bast also barked. This was actually quite a funny thing. Bast was a purebred white cat, and cats and dogs were notoriously hostile to each other. Wasn't it funny to let a cat bark like a dog? However, after hearing Bast's barking, Anubis, whose chest was heaving up and down excitedly, completely calmed down. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out something. Take this and follow me, Bast said to Gohan. This is... Gohan looked at the thing that Anubis spat out. It was a grayish-black metal strip that looked a little strange. It felt familiar. Wait, isn't this the key to my house? Gohan suddenly remembered that this grayish-black strip was exactly the same as the key to Gohan's house that I Ching had given him in Chongyang Mountain. At that time, I Ching had given Gohan 2 boxes at the same time. One of the boxes contained the 6 transformations elixir that could save Yuzhong City, and the other box contained the key to Gohan's house. A key that even Gohan didn't know where. If this strip is really the key, then its weight should be. Gohan used his 4 fingers to clamp the key on the ground and used all his strength to grab it. The key did not budge at all. As expected, this seemingly weightless item was terrifyingly heavy. It was at least 50,000 kilograms. Now, Gohan was certain that the strip that Bast had spat out was the key that I Ching had given him in Chongyang Mountain. Only that key, which was made from a fragment of a white dwarf, could have such a terrifying weight. So this key was originally hidden in Anubis's dog mouth. Could it be that this key originally belonged to Anubis? Gohan felt that the story of this instant's dungeon was becoming more and more beyond his imagination. This instant's dungeon did not simply tell him how to save King Yu. The contents of this instant's dungeon might be related to himself, his family, and the various secrets hidden between Zhetian and Jiendi. I Ching had once said that before reaching the peak of famed swords, he should not attempt to use his hands to pick up the key. I Ching was right. When Gohan borrowed the power of King Yu Juzi and the yin-yang swordplay, he barely managed to pick up the key. However, not taking a single step with the key was a huge torture for Gohan. After taking at most 10 steps, Gohan felt that he would die from exhaustion. You can put it in your dimensional pocket. Bast saw Gohan's embarrassment and reminded him, but you must remember, this key cannot be stored in the dimensional space for too long, because its existence will cause damage to the dimensional space. Without the protection of a suitable container, your dimensional pocket will completely collapse in less than 3 days, and everything will be lost in the dimensional space. 3 days? Gohan only had 22 hours left in this instant's dungeon. How could he use 3 days? Thus, Gohan put the key into his dimensional pocket. At the same time, he glanced at his mission list and found that Mission 41 had been completed. He was currently working on Mission 42. Find the door. Find the tightly shut door. So, Batet is currently looking for that door on his own? Gohan pondered. Bast opened the void gate and walked in without saying a word. Gohan followed closely behind and entered the void door. The black light and shadow changed. When the void door opened again, Gohan left the void and arrived in a completely unfamiliar area. Alright, it's here. Gohan heard Bast, who was leading the way, say, "This is where the door is?" Looking at the surroundings, Gohan had some doubts. At this time, the place where Gohan was standing was clearly a vast jungle. There were only some ruins of buildings left from before the apocalypse, as well as endless tall trees. Apart from that, there was nothing else. How could there be a door hidden here? Lord Bast, may I ask where the door is? Gohan turned to ask Bast. At this time, Gohan realized that Bast, who was not far from him, had now quietly opened up a distance of more than a few hundred meters. Ha 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 ha. The Real Gate is thousands of miles away. You'll never be able to find it. Bast laughed mockingly. In the next second, the cat god opened the void door and jumped through it at lightning speed, instantly disappearing in front of Gohan. Because Bast used the void gate to leave, Gohan could not catch up to him even if he wanted to. Not good. This cunning old cat has brought me to the wrong place. Gohan cried in his heart. Thinking of how Anubis had run away from him and Bast's strange behavior throughout the whole process, Gohan was almost certain. Although Bast and Anubis were still very respectful to this Heaven's Sword Emperor, calling him boss and carrying out all of his orders, there was definitely a deep rift between the two. Anubis and Bast didn't seem to want the Yuan-Tu and Avicii swords to be repaired, and were instead thinking of ways to ruin this matter. This did not seem strange. The 3 gods of Egypt were originally forced to follow Zhetian Jiendi because their divinities were in the hands of Zhetian Jiendi. It was very normal for them not to want Zhetian Jiendi's sword of Avicii to be repaired. But in reality, Gohan and the 3 gods of Egypt had lived under the same roof for more than 20 days. He also had a certain understanding of these 3 guys. Gohan was sure that although the 3 gods of Egypt were full of complaints about I Ching in reality, they respected I Ching from the bottom of their hearts. They were sincerely convinced and full of nostalgia. They would never want I Ching's sword of Avicii to be broken just like that. There's something strange here. There must be a big problem. But what exactly is the problem? Gohan's mind was full of doubts. Unfortunately, with the information that Gohan currently had, he could not solve these doubts at all. What he could do now was to find the door. Only by finding the door and opening it could it be possible to know what happened inside. However, it was clear that Bast was leading him in the opposite direction. The gate could not possibly be nearby. This made things very difficult for Gohan. Only God knew where the real location of the door was. Unless Gohan searched every piece of land in the vicinity, it was absolutely impossible to find the real location of the door. Calm down. What I need now is your wisdom. Gohan emptied his thoughts and calmed his brain as much as possible. Then, he took out a map from his dimensional pocket. This was a map of Yuzhong City, but it was not a map of Yuzhong City 700 years ago, but a map of modern Yuzhong City. This map could not show the environmental characteristics of 700 years ago. However, although the environmental characteristics were different, the geographical characteristics were exactly the same. The names of places could be changed, and the rivers, lakes, and grass could also be changed, but the entire terrain could not be changed. And the most important thing was that the location of the core area of Yuzhong City had never changed, which meant that Gohan's starting point was the same on this map. Gohan's starting point was the hut where Zhetian Jindy stayed. I don't know if everyone still remembers the hut at the ground entrance of the Emergency Response Center. Batet once said in a very nostalgic tone that the hut was built by him and Zhetian Jindy together. In fact, when Gohan first saw the hut in the Instance Dungeon, he had already determined that this hut was the same hut as the one at the ground entrance of the Emergency Response Center. This way, Gohan could determine his starting point. Then, Gohan took out a pen and placed the tip of the pen at the starting point. Then, he closed his eyes and began to recall the path he had taken. How many times did he change directions? Where did he change directions? How far did he travel each time he changed directions? Relying on his insane memory, Gohan completely and accurately restored the entire route of his actions on the map. Finally, the tip of the pen stopped at a certain location. This is... Gohan looked at the last landing point on the map and was surprised to find that he was on the Miling Mountain Range. Looking at the location, it was exactly where Gohan had his bones and organs shattered by Medusa on the Miling Mountain Range. He was on the verge of death and had to rely on Medusa's petrification to save his life. Yes, under Gohan's feet was one of the largest dimensional crystal veins in Yuzhong City, the Luoting vein. Chapter 728. It's exactly the location of the Luoting mineral vein. Looking at the spot on the map, Gohan fell into deep thought. If it was as Bast had said, that he had deliberately led him to a completely wrong place, a place thousands of miles away from the real location of the gate, wouldn't it be too much of a coincidence? He had randomly found a place, and it was the richest vein of the dimensional crystal mine in Yuzhong City? The probability of this was almost the same as winning 5 million in the lottery. No, this is definitely not a matter of luck. Could it be that this cat is lying to me? Gohan suddenly thought of a possibility. Bast had told Gohan that the Real Gate was thousands of miles away. Was the gate really thousands of miles away? Was this cunning white cat trying to mislead them? Most of the people, especially the smart ones, when they heard Bast's words, their first reaction was to leave this place immediately and search for the door in other places. The smarter they were, the more ideas they would have, and the more places they would be able to guess. They would never have thought that Bast might have brought them to the real location. This was the so-called, it was darkest under the light, and the most dangerous place is the safest place. Thinking of this, Gohan immediately began to search the surrounding area. He searched very carefully and the area was small. It was in the area where Bast had stopped. Gohan's idea was very simple. He was 70% sure that Bast was trying to be smart. The gate was nearby. If he guessed wrong, there was nothing he could do. It was better than searching the entire surrounding area of Yuzhong City. Suddenly, he found something strange on a tree next to him. He found that a piece of bark on the trunk of the tree had been peeled off, revealing a small square piece of yellow wood. The shape of this yellow wood was exactly the same as the jasper ring that I Ching had left on his finger. Could this be the entrance to the gate? Gohan placed the green jade ring on his finger into the groove of the damaged bark. As expected, it fit perfectly and was connected to the tree bark. The next second, the trunk of the big tree suddenly turned, and a piece of bark moved down, revealing an entrance that was only big enough for one person to enter. Therefore, without any hesitation, he jumped directly into the hole. Deities are indeed slaves of fate. As Gohan entered the tree hole, another void gate opened in the air behind Gohan. Bast's head poked out of the void gate and silently watched as Guhan entered the tree hole. The interior of the tree hole was very similar to the emergency evacuation system, which was connected to a slide. Guhan didn't know how long he had been sliding. When he landed on the ground again, it was already 3 to 4 minutes later. It's too dark. If only there were some lights. As soon as Guhan said that, the entire world became bright. Countless fluorescent tubes lit up the entire underground world, as if it was daytime. It was a hall. This hall was very similar to the entrance to the Ibis temple, the lair of the 3 Egyptian gods that Guhan had been to before. It was an empty hall with a tightly shut door. Guhan picked up the mission list in his hand and found that mission number 42 had indeed been completed. Currently, mission number 43 was in progress. The mission description was very simple, with only 4 words. Open the door. Guhan walked to the front of the door and observed it carefully. He found that this door did not require any complicated and cumbersome opening method like the Ibis temple. The keyhole was simply placed in the center of the door. As long as the key was inserted, the door would open. Taking out the white dwarf key from his dimensional pocket. This key was simply too heavy. Guhan's hand that was holding the key trembled uncontrollably. He hovered around the keyhole for a long time, but he still couldn't insert the white dwarf key. I believe that everyone has experienced this in their daily lives. The key is obviously in your hand, but you can't insert it no matter what. If you let go, the key will fly in by itself. Guhan suddenly heard a voice beside his ear. However, this voice did not come from the outside world, but from within his own body. This was Etion's voice. Following Etion's words, Guhan loosened his grip on the heart-shaped key. Sure enough, the key floated in the air by itself. As if attracted by the keyhole, it slowly inserted itself into the keyhole. When the entire white dwarf key was inserted, the door let out a creaking sound. Soon after, it slowly opened to both sides, revealing the world behind the door to Guhan. When the door opened, the key automatically flew out from the keyhole and was placed back into Guhan's dimensional pocket. "Let me out." Guhan suddenly heard Etion say this to him. Soon after, Etion was released from her sword form. "That's right, it's here. It's here." The world behind the door seemed to have triggered some of Etion's memories. She staggered into the world behind the door, touching every blade of grass, every tree, every piece of furniture. This really is a home. Just like how I Ching once told Guhan that this was Guhan's home, the world behind the door was indeed a home. There were tables, chairs, a sofa, a coffee table, a wardrobe, a shoe cabinet, a rocking chair, a king-sized bed, and so on. There were also televisions, refrigerators, computers, air conditioners, and other household appliances. Behind the door was a warm and comfortable home. It had everything a home should have. The only thing it lacked was people. However, what made Guhan curious was that this home was not decorated like a normal home. In the thousands of years of human history, once a home was big, it would be divided into various rooms. There were bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms, gyms, entertainment rooms, and so on. However, this home did not have any rooms. Everything was placed in a huge room without any barriers. It was as if the home was in a gymnasium. "Etion, have you been here before?" Seeing that Etion was still immersed in this home, Guhan asked very directly. He knew nothing about this home. He did not know what secrets were hidden here, so he hoped that Etion would be able to tell him something. "I don't know. I don't know anything." Etion suddenly squatted down and hugged her head. Her expression was very painful, as if she was about to explode. "I feel that everything here is so familiar, but whenever I try to remember something, I can't remember anything. It's so painful, my head is about to explode." "I get it. Looks like Etion's memories of this place have been purposely deleted, but she must have lived here for a very long time. That's why even if the memories in her mind have been deleted, the memories stored in her body are still preserved." Everyone always thought that only the human brain could store memories, but in reality, the human body could also store memories. It was just like how you could move freely in a familiar environment with your eyes closed, or how you could quickly type a manuscript on the keyboard. Although Etion's memories were gone, her body still remembered this place. Etion is Jetian Jiendi's sword mistress, which means that she must have lived here with Jetian Jiendi for a period of time. That's why her body remembers this place. Through Etion's behavior, Gohan instantly guessed a lot of things. He also had a lot of questions in his mind. If this is where Etion and I Ching used to live, then why did I Ching tell me that this white dwarf key is the key to my home? This is clearly I Ching's home. Gohan silently thought, but in his heart, he already had a vague answer. This could be I Ching's home, or it could be Gohan's home. If I Ching and Gohan had lived together in this place before. Let me out. Let us out. Why can Etion go out by herself? We want to come out too. Gu Yun, who was in the Zifu, was unhappy and shouted that she wanted to come out. Although Yu Wang did not say anything, Gohan believed that she was also imagining it. Therefore, Gohan decided to release the 3 jealous sword mistresses together with Juzi. I've been here before. Unexpectedly, the moment Gu Yun jumped out, she immediately pointed at the empty house and said loudly, "Big brother, I've really been here before. I've even lived here for a long time. But that's not right. When did I come here? Ouch, ouch, ouch. I've really been here before." Why did Gu Yun think that she had been here before? Oh right, Gu Yun's previous identity was Yuchang's sword. Jetian Jiendi's sword mistress was Yuchang's sword. She had lived here before, so it was normal for her to have memories of this place. However, it seemed that Yuchang's sword's memories of this place had also been deleted. Just like Etion, only her body's memories were left. I've also been here before. Immediately after Gu Yun, King Yu actually said something like this. This was strange. Gohan could guarantee that King Yu had never been shrouding the heavens Jiendi's sword maiden, so why did she also have memories of this place? Could it be that the wielder of the Yu King Go Jian Jian had brought the Yu King Go Jian 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 to visit Jetian Jiendi? But that didn't seem right. If it was just a visit from a friend, then the Yu King Go Jian Jian had only stayed here for a few days at most. It was impossible for him to have any memory of this place. If King Yu and Gu Yun had memories of this place, then it was reasonable. But when the expressionless Juzi suddenly told Gohan that she also had memories of this place, Gohan was completely confused. Juzi was different from other sword maidens. Gohan was 100% sure that he was the first sword wielder in Juzi's life. Before this, she had never synchronized with any other sword wielder. This meant that when Juzi was a sword maiden, she only had memories of living with Gohan. She definitely didn't have any other memories. In other words, Juzi could only have memories of less than 40 days since the invasion of Yuzhong City. It was impossible for her to have memories from 700 years ago, but Juzi would never lie to her sword maiden. So the question was, where did Juzi's memories of this place come from? Could it really have come from the future? Chapter 729. What happened next clearly proved that Gohan's sword maidens had indeed lived here before. For example, Etion told Gohan that she always felt that there was something strange under the bed, and then Gohan found an embarrassing photo album under the bed. Another example was King Yu telling Gohan that he felt that there was something creepy in the corner of the wall. Then, Gohan found a mouse hole in the corner of the wall, and a large group of living mice lived in it. Gu Yun also told Gohan that there were some very cute things hidden in the cupboard. Then, Gohan found a large blue and white fish pillow in the cupboard. Gu Yun instantly pounced on the blue and white fish pillow and hugged it tightly. She would not let go no matter what, and looked like she wanted to take a few more bites. Actually, Gu Yun's appearance here was also very mysterious, because Gohan did not seem to synchronize with the Doyu sword in the game. Gohan only remembered this after a long time. Later, after asking Guyun, he found out that she seemed to have entered the game with Tian. Could this be the magical effect of the yin-yang sword technique? Gohan shook his head, and he was getting more and more confused about these things. The most shocking news was revealed by Juzi. She suddenly told Gohan that in the chef's drawer under the television, there was Gohan's favorite thing. When Gohan instinctively felt that something was wrong, Gu Yun was the first to rush over, open the drawer, and rummage through a large pile of optical discs. To modern people, optical discs were a very ancient thing. This kind of storage medium that had gradually been eliminated before the apocalypse could often be sold for an absolute high price in modern society. In the antique market, a disc from before the apocalypse, as long as the contents of the disc could still be read, could be sold for at least 400,000 yuan. There were at least 30 of these discs in I Ching's house. A rough estimate would be more than 12 million yuan. Unfortunately, these discs only existed in the game and not in reality. But what was strange was that the surface of these discs were not like normal discs. There were some portraits of the characters and the names of the films on the disc. They were all printed in white and had no words on them. Let Gu Yun see if there's anything good in this disc. Gu Yun had never come into contact with old appliances like VCD and DVD, but she was very skilled in operating them. She turned them on, connected them to the power supply, took them out of the storage, put in the CD, put in the storage, and connected the video source. The whole process was done in one go. In less than 5 seconds, the contents of the CD appeared on the TV. A simple room appeared in the TV. There was a sofa in the room, and a beautiful woman wearing black stockings and light blue business attire was sitting on the sofa. Then, this beautiful woman began to speak to the camera in a language that no one could understand. This is Japanese. Gohan could vaguely distinguish the origin of this language, but Gohan couldn't figure out why I Ching's home had a Japanese CD. Could it be that I Ching was learning Japanese? Fast forward, fast forward. The content in the first 10 minutes is the most boring. It's not interesting at all. Gu Yun pressed the fast forward button very skillfully. She seemed to know that the CD would start with 10 minutes of boring content. When the video was fast forwarded to a certain time, Gu Yun pressed the play button accurately. A shirtless man wearing only shorts appeared in the video. He sat on the beauty's body and then began to do something indescribable. Pa! Gohan snatched the remote control from Gu Yun's hand at lightning speed. He quickly pressed the exit button, took out the CD inside, and stuffed it back into the drawer. Okay. Don't touch the things in here. You'll destroy important clues. Gohan was afraid that these clowns would find something inexplicable, so he clearly gave such an order to his sword lady, which caused strong dissatisfaction among some of the sword ladies. After giving his sword lady the order, Gohan quickly went to look at the mission list to see what he should do next. Mission number 44 wrote, after opening the door, find the Saint Seed in the room. Saint Seed. Gohan's eyes lit up when he saw these 3 words. This was a term that Gohan had never seen before. There was no such term in all the books that Gohan had read. However, Gohan vaguely guessed the meaning of this term when he saw the name of the Saint Seed. This Saint Seed had to be a dimensional crystal that was above the Emperor Seed. It was also the only dimensional crystal that could repair an Emperor Sword-level sword lady. The dimensional crystal, which had not been invented by humans for thousands of years and only existed in the imagination, actually existed in this world and was once in the hands of the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor. Since the mission book said that the Saint Seed was hidden in this room, the Saint Seed must be in this room. Therefore, Gohan immediately mobilized his sword ladies to search the room for the possible existence of the Saint Seed dimensional crystal. There was no need to describe the search process in detail. Anyway, Gohan's sword ladies were not polite to the room and turned everything inside out like robbers. They found a lot of very interesting and indescribable things, but there was no trace of the Saint Seed at all. Unknowingly, they searched for more than half an hour. King Yu and the rest had turned the entire room inside out 3 times, but they still did not find anything. Therefore, Guhan simply ordered everyone to stop and called everyone to his side. Although I don't know why everyone has a familiar feeling about this place, I believe this feeling can't be wrong. You should have lived here for a period of time. Now, I hope that everyone doesn't search with their naked eyes. Instead, close your eyes and search with your body's memory. Let your body tell you where the precious saint's seed is hidden. Under the situation where searching with the naked eye was useless, Guhan could only place his hope on the sword lady's body's memory. Under Guhan's command, even the noisy Gu Yun closed her eyes and tried to grasp that inconceivable feeling. This kind of search that was similar to meditation lasted for a long time. Suddenly, Tian opened her eyes. I feel it. The most precious thing is within our reach, but we've been neglecting it. Tian's words sounded mysterious. What did she mean by a place within our reach but we've been neglecting it? Guhan stood up and looked around the room again. He began to talk to himself in his mind. The place that we've been neglecting means that we've never looked for it. But everything here has been searched by King Yu and the rest. I've also used sword qi to explore the ground. All the ground is solid. There's definitely no basement or hidden compartment. Could it be that the saint's seed is hidden in the furniture? Then wouldn't I have to grind all the furniture to pieces to find the saint's seed? But if I do that, I'll definitely destroy Zetianjiandi's home. Actually, it's not a big deal if it's destroyed. It's just a dungeon. But why is it that every time I want to make a move, my heart keeps stopping me? Yes, Guhan had long suspected that the precious saint's seed might be hidden in the furniture. So when the first search was fruitless, Guhan thought of using sword qi to grind all the furniture to see if the saint's seed was hidden in the furniture. However, every time Guhan wanted to make a move, his heart would involuntarily produce a resistance. It was as if Guhan's heart was telling Guhan that the thing inside could not be harmed at all. It was his most precious thing. There's no other way. Looks like I can only go against my heart. Guhan pulled out the Qing Pin sword and prepared to grind all the furniture into powder with sword qi. This was because all the sword ladies were in a state of liberation. The only one that was not liberated was the Qing Pin sword that was still bound in sword form. Idiot Guhan! Hand over the treasure on you! Just as Guhan was about to make a move, Qing Pin suddenly spoke with her baby voice that was filled with desire. Qing Pin seems a little strange. When Guhan heard Qing Pin's voice that was filled with desire, he immediately frowned. This was because Qing Pin seemed to be in a hurry to obtain something on him. Qing Pin, what do you want? What treasure do I have? Guhan asked curiously. Good treasure. Good treasure. Guhan suddenly felt as if he was hallucinating. There were 2 voices in his ears at the same time. These 2 voices were both Qing Pin's, but one was childish while the other was mature. Guhan had heard these 2 voices before. The childish voice was Qing Pin's original voice, while the mature voice reminded Guhan of the young girl Qing Pin that he had met here 700 years later. Qing Pin, wake up! In the face of the sudden appearance of the young girl's poverty, Guhan suddenly poured a violent stream of sword essence into the poverty sword, and then a violent stream of sword qi rushed out of the door, causing the stone wall outside to shake violently. What's wrong with me? With the help of the sword essence, Qing Pin trembled. The young girl Qing Pin's accent instantly disappeared, and Qing Pin's voice returned to its original voice. Is this what I wanted to ask you? Qing Pin, what happened to you just now? Guhan asked with concern. Qing Pin doesn't know either. Qing Pin felt that Guhan had something that Qing Pin really wanted. It was something that was very important to Qing Pin. After that, Qing Pin didn't know anything else. Something that Qing Pin really wanted? Guhan's mind suddenly recalled many of the stories that happened in the Mei Ling mountain range. Only then did he remember that the poor young girl actually had a mysterious ability. She had an extraordinary ability to sense the dimensional crystal stones. She could easily find the dimensional crystals hidden in the rock. Moreover, the higher the quality of the dimensional crystal, the greater her reaction. Could it be that the thing that made Qing Pin have such a huge reaction was the sage seed? And the sage seed was hidden in his body? Guhan patted his head and took out the white dwarf key from his dimensional pocket. This is it. Give it to me. Qing Pin said intoxicatedly. It seemed like the sage seed was hidden in this white dwarf key. Chapter 730. Although he had guessed that the sage seed was in the white dwarf key, the problem of how to extract the sage seed from the white dwarf key had become a huge problem. White dwarfs were actually stars, but they were stars that had evolved to the end of their life. Earth's sun was considered a star that was in its middle age. After another 6.5 billion years, our sun would enter the end of its life and gradually become a white dwarf. The reason why a white dwarf, which was the size of a finger, had the weight of a few heavy tanks was because of the high density of matter in its body. If a cubic meter of solid iron was compressed to the size of a cubic centimeter, one could imagine how terrifying the density of a white dwarf was. It was almost impossible to cut open a matter with such a high density. Unless one had a weapon of the same density, one could only consider using brute force to cut it open. In other words, unless Guhan had an emperor's sword, it was impossible to cut open the white dwarf with brute force. If it was in the real world, Guhan could use the Xianyuan sword to try. However, in the game, Guhan was really helpless. Of course, other than using brute force to cut it open, there were other ways. Of course, it was impossible for the sage seed to be naturally hidden in the white dwarf. Someone must have hidden it in the white dwarf, and that person was most likely Zhetianjiendi. Since the sage seed had to be hidden in the white dwarf, a part of the white dwarf must have been cut open and hollowed out before placing the sage seed inside. Therefore, the white dwarf key in Guhan's hand had already been cut open. However, it was cleverly reassembled by Zhetianjiendi. Guhan had to find a way to open the white dwarf key that had been cut open. However, he did not know how Zhetianjiendi had managed to reassemble the cut-open part. Guhan lifted the white dwarf with much effort and examined it carefully. However, he could not find any traces of it being cut open. There's no other way. Looks like I can only use that move, Guhan suddenly muttered to himself. While the other sword maidens around him were confused, their bodies turned into rays of light and were forcibly returned by Guhan. What happened? King Yu was shocked to find that the sword ladies around him had all returned to their swords. He was the only one left outside. What do you want to do? King Yu instinctively sensed Guhan's terrible intentions. King Yu, do me a favor, it's time for you to contribute your body. With that, Guhan carried King Yu into his arms, and then the two of them jumped onto the bed. 1,000 words of harmony in the end. Guhan did not enter King Yu's body. This was because his original goal was not to do anything shameful with King Yu. His original goal was to provoke the flames of lust in his heart and then use the power of the flames to stimulate his green lotus white root body. Without a doubt, Guhan's plan was successful. After playing with King Yu's body for more than 10 minutes, he successfully activated his green lotus white root body. With the help of his 100x vision, he began to observe the possible cracks in the white dwarf key. But King Yu's situation was very bad. This child and Guhan had at least been husband and wife for more than 30 days. Her body had changed from the cold little dragon girl's virgin body to a tender, juicy, and somewhat flirtatious girl who had eaten the marrow and wanted to taste it. When she was a virgin, being played with by Guhan could quickly extinguish the flames of lust. However, when it came to the flirtatious young lady, the flames would not be extinguished so easily. Anyway, while Guhan was doing his best to observe the white dwarf key, our King Yu was gritting his teeth. One hand was constantly touching his lower body, trying to extinguish the damned flames with water. On the other hand, when the green lotus white root body was activated, Guhan successfully observed the extremely small crack on the white dwarf key. This crack was at least a nanometer level crack. No wonder Guhan couldn't see it with his naked eye. Guhan also couldn't imagine what kind of mystical sword technique could achieve this. At least, with Guhan's own strength, even if Guhan was given a piece of tofu, he wouldn't be able to cut a nanometer-level crack. However, there was a new problem. The crack was on the nanoscale, so it was not much different from not having the crack. Unless Guhan could find a nanoscale needle that was as hard as the white dwarf fragment, he might be able to slowly pick out the white dwarf fragment. However, finding such a needle was much more difficult than finding an emperor's sword. Because there were definitely emperor's swords in this world, but there might not be such a needle. What should I do? This shouldn't be an impossible task. Guhan thought vexedly on the bed. At this moment, King Yu, who was silently accumulating water in his body, was finally about to burst out. Ah! King Yu suddenly let out a high-pitched groan. Then, his entire body straightened like a taut string. His originally bent leg kicked out along with his tensed body. Then, he kicked the back of Guhan, who was sitting in front of him. If it was under normal circumstances, a kick from a leg on Guhan's back would cause Guhan's body to not sway at all. However, Guhan had already entered the green lotus white root body state. More importantly, he was holding the strangely heavy white dwarf key in his hand. His hand was already trembling. When King Yu kicked him, Guhan's body that was 100 times more sensitive began to tremble violently. Then, he uncontrollably loosened his grip on the white dwarf key. The white dwarf key began to free fall and fell right between King Yu's legs. Then, it happened to be shot by the unknown liquid that King Yu had spewed out. The moment it came into contact with the unknown liquid, the white dwarf key suddenly floated in the air. A small square on its rectangular body began to protrude, and then separated from the white dwarf key, revealing a transparent pure white crystal that looked like a high-quality glass. Even with Guhan's calmness, he could not remain calm after seeing this scene. He could not understand how Hai I Ching's sense of humor was for her to set up such a shameful way to open the key. This kind of opening method was something that Guhan could never imagine in his entire life. If it were not for all these coincidences happening today, Guhan reckoned that he would never be able to open this white dwarf key in his entire life. Wait, don't tell me I Ching has already divined what just happened. Thinking of this, Guhan felt his pores becoming uneasy. You're not allowed to tell anyone about this for the rest of your life. Otherwise, I'd rather be a sword mistress for that Ku Rock Inn. After the lingering charm faded, King Yu's face became even redder. Guhan believed that King Yu was speaking the truth. If he dared to tell anyone about this, King Yu might really go back to find Ku Rock Inn. Don't worry, even if I die, I won't tell anyone about what happened today. Guhan guaranteed with certainty. He was sincere, at least he was sincere now. After taking out the saint's seed from the white dwarf key, Guhan placed the remaining white dwarf fragments into his dimensional pocket. He opened up the mission list again. As expected, mission number 44 was completed and mission number 15 was revealed. Find the furnace of heaven and earth. Meet up with Shitian Jiendi, who has already arrived there. Let's go. Guhan brought King Yu, who was still tidying up his clothes, out of this home that all the sword ladies felt extremely familiar with. After taking one last look at the door that was slowly closing, Guhan and King Yu left without looking back. Where was the furnace of heaven and earth? Guhan didn't know. However, he found a map in King Yu's home. It was a hand-drawn map with delicate lines. Guhan guessed that it was I Ching's handiwork. There were no names marked on the map, only simple topography. However, through this terrain, Guhan vaguely recognized the location of the furnace of heaven and earth. This was because there was a circular basin on the map with 8 hills of different shapes distributed according to the positions of the 8 trigrams. Therefore, Guhan guessed that this should be the naturally formed furnace of heaven and earth. However, this location was quite far from where Guhan was. It almost spanned the entire length of the map. After a rough estimation, it was estimated to be more than 200 kilometers away. There were 20 hours left before the end of the instant's dungeon. Guhan estimated his speed. If he ran at full speed, he could maintain a constant speed of 30 kilometers per hour. This meant that he would need a total of 8 hours to reach the furnace of heaven and earth. Moreover, it would consume a lot of Guhan's stamina. Guhan estimated that he would only have half of his life left by the time he reached the place. If he were to consider the possibility of encountering Yuan Ko midway and fighting him, Guhan estimated that he would only be able to reach the furnace of heaven and earth within 12 hours. Forget it, there was no time to think about these problems. If he was left with half of his life, then so be it. Half of his life was still a life. It was fine as long as he could not die. Just as Guhan was about to start his marathon, there was a tremor in the air. The gate of the void opened and Bast, who had tried to trick Guhan, appeared in front of Guhan again. "You found the sage seed?" Bast looked at Guhan and asked hesitantly. "I found it. This sage seed is hidden in the white dwarf star key that you gave me." Guhan did not seem to be on guard at all, and very honestly told the truth. "Is that so? Boss is really an idiot." Bast sneered. Then, he seemed to have let go of a lot of things and said in a resigned tone, "Come in. I will use the gate of the void to send you on your way. The furnace of heaven and earth is too far away. I cannot let you exhaust all your stamina. Otherwise, there will be no hope." Chapter 731. After bringing Guhan to the furnace, Bast immediately disappeared into the void gate, unwilling to stay for even a minute longer. Guhan carefully observed the surrounding environment. This furnace was actually a circular crater with a diameter of about 10 kilometers. At the bottom of the crater, he could see a black figure standing there. Guhan fixed his eyes on it. Who else could it be other than the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor? Zetian Jiendi was already waiting for Guhan at the furnace. He seemed very sure that Guhan would be able to complete the quest. "Your Majesty." Guhan walked to Zetian Jiendi's side and bowed deeply. "Did you find the Saint Seed?" Zetian Jiendi asked as he stroked his beard. "I've found it." Guhan nodded. "Good. Very good in this world, only you can find it." Zetian Jiendi looked at Guhan and suddenly revealed a strange smile. "All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's repair the Yuan Tu and Abi swords." Zetian Jiendi took out a brocade box from his dimensional pocket. He opened it, revealing the broken pieces of the Yuan Tu and Abi swords. Guhan had seen the 2 swords during the invasion of Yuzhang City, and had even fought with them himself. As such, Guhan could confirm that the 2 broken Emperor swords were indeed the Yuan Tu and Abi swords. It was a pity that these 2 sword ladies, who were known to be the strongest sword ladies of the human race and were Emperor swords, had fallen to the point where they were broken and became 4 pieces of dull scrap metal. The mission list had also been updated, and it was now the 46th mission. Help the heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor repair the broken Yuan-Tu and Avicii twin sword. "Your Majesty, why aren't there any blacksmiths here?" Guhan looked around and found that there were only him and Zetian Jiendi. There was no one else. The sword-bearer was in charge of fighting, while the blacksmith was in charge of repairing the sword-mistresses. This was common knowledge. Even someone as amazing as Kanzu could not be a sword-bearer and a blacksmith at the same time. Therefore, if one wanted to repair a sword-mistress, they needed a blacksmith present. A sword-mistress like the Emperor's swords needed a grandmaster. Otherwise, no one would be able to bear the risk of failure. "My method is very special. I don't need the power of a blacksmith, just the power of the furnace of heaven and earth." Jetian Jiendi glanced at Gohan, then suddenly took out a small dagger and made a cut on his wrist. Golden blood immediately flowed out. This is Emperor's blood. Seeing the golden blood, Gohan's eyes shone with surprise. There were quite a number of humans who once held the view that Emperor sword wielders were no longer humans and that they should be expelled from the human race. This moronic view was suppressed by the Sword Council on the spot. Humans and sword wielders who held such views were either executed or imprisoned forever until they died. The reason why humans wanted to expel Jiendi from the human race was because the blood of Emperor Swordbearers was no longer bright red. Even after 1,000 years, human scientists still could not figure out why the blood of the sword bearers of the immortal sword tier would turn golden after they ascended the throne and became the emperor of the immortal sword tier. Although they did not know how Emperor's blood was formed, there was no doubt that Emperor's blood had many magical abilities. Before the medic pods were invented, sword-bearers who were heavily injured could instantly recover from any serious physical or internal injuries if they consumed a drop of Emperor's blood. Swallowing 2 drops would allow him to regrow his limbs, and swallowing 3 drops would allow him to regrow all his limbs, healing all the injuries caused by fighting Yuan Shen. Moreover, Emperor's blood had the effect of replenishing lost sword essence in the body. For swordbearers who were below famous sword level, 1 drop of Emperor's blood could replenish all lost sword essence. For spirit sword level swordbearers, they could replenish about 40%, and for immortal sword level swordbearers, they could replenish 10%. It was a miracle medicine that could save lives in battle. Therefore, Emperor's sword level swordbearers had the title of living bodhisattva. Every day, a certain amount of their blood would be extracted to make a miracle medicine that could save lives. Most of the other swordbearers would find an Emperor's sword-level swordbearer to rely on, hoping to obtain a few drops of Emperor's blood to save their lives at a critical moment. It was a pity that Emperor's sword-level swordbearers could not extract large amounts of Emperor's blood, because the ability of Emperor's sword-level swordbearers to produce blood was inferior to that of normal humans. Once they lost too much blood, not only would their battle power be greatly reduced, but it would also take a long time for them to recover. According to calculations, extracting 3 drops of Emperor's blood per day for every Jiendi was the optimal ratio. If this was exceeded, the Emperor's sword-level swordbearers would be severely affected. Later on, with the invention of the medical pods and even more black technology, most of the sword-bearers gradually got rid of their dependence on Emperor's blood, and relied on the medical pods for emergency treatment. However, Emperor's blood was still very popular. This was because the medical pods required a safe environment for treatment, and Emperor's blood did not require this. It could be quickly healed by directly swallowing it. Such precious Emperor's blood flowed out of Jetian Jiendi's body as if it did not cost money, and all of it dripped onto the soil beneath Jetian Jiendi. This was not a small amount of Emperor's blood, but a huge amount of Emperor's blood. Gohan estimated that Jetian Jiendi had released at least 5,000 cubic centimeters of Emperor's blood, and allowed it to drip onto the soil to stop the wound on his wrist. At that moment, Jetian Jiendi's face was pale, and his body was weak. His hair had instantly turned white, and he looked like an old man with 1 foot in the grave. He did not look like Jiendi at all. "Your Majesty, please take care." Gohan hurriedly helped Jetian Jiendi, who was on the verge of collapsing, up and said with concern, "I'm fine. I just need some time to recover." Jetian Jiendi waved his hand, then looked at the shards of the Yuan-Tu and Abi swords beside him, and said weakly, "Come, place the shards where my Emperor's blood fell." Gohan noticed that the soil where Jetian Jiendi's Emperor's blood had turned golden. It was not just a simple stain, but a small piece of soil had completely changed. The loose soil had become a dazzling, shiny gold. Gohan's hand touched the piece of gold. It felt like solid metal to the touch. The sovereign blood had completely turned the soil into gold. This was a genuine case of turning soil into gold. Hurry up, don't waste time. When my emperor's blood is at its strongest, place the Yuan-Tu and Abi swords on it. Zetian Jiendi, who was behind Gohan, urged. Gohan nodded, then picked up the Yuan-Tu and Abi swords and placed them on the small piece of gold that had been dyed by the emperor's sword. The moment the emperor's sword touched the piece of gold, something miraculous happened. The small piece of gold suddenly began to spread. Who knew whether it was 1 or 2 seconds, but the entire heaven and earth furnace, which was 10 kilometers in diameter, had turned completely golden. It was no longer a simple pit, but a huge furnace made entirely of pure gold. No wonder this place is called the furnace of heaven and earth. This entire basin is a furnace that needs Emperor's blood to activate. Gohan murmured to himself as he felt the miraculous furnace beneath his feet. Now, take out the Saint's seed and place it on the Yuan-Tu and Abi swords. Zetian Jiendi urged. Only with the power of the furnace of heaven and earth can we refine the Saint's seed and fuse the Yuan-Tu and Abi swords back together. Hurry up, we can't miss this crucial moment. Yes, Your Majesty. Gohan took out a piece of Saint's seed that was as bright as glass and placed it on the Yuan-Tu and Abi swords. When he saw this, Zetian Jiendi, who had been nervous all this time, let out a sigh of relief. His face seemed to have a tinge of red. Help me get out of here. In 5 minutes, the lava underground will ignite the entire furnace. If we stay here, we'll just turn into a bowl of charcoal, Zetian Jiendi said to Gohan. When Gohan heard that they only had 5 minutes, he immediately helped Zetian Jiendi up, and quickly walked towards the outside of the furnace of heaven and earth. As they walked, Gohan could feel it very clearly. The furnace of heaven and earth, which had originally been cold to the touch, had started to warm up. When they were halfway there, the warmth had become scorching hot, as if they were in a sauna. When Gohan brought Zetian Jiendi to the outside of the furnace of heaven and earth, the furnace of heaven and earth had turned into a pot of boiling oil. The rubber insoles of Gohan's sneakers had all melted, turning into a pile of black paste. Your Majesty, what should I do next? Gohan asked Zetian Jiendi. Next? You don't need to do anything else after this. Just wait quietly. The heaven-shrouding Sword Emperor stood up. He was extremely quick and seemed to have recovered from his weakened state. No more missions? But I haven't completed any missions after number 47. Gohan took out his mission list and glanced at it. He was surprised to find that mission number 46 was already shown as completed, but mission number 47 was not activated. Strange, could it be that the mission was completed on number 46? Then why did they add numbers 47, 48, 49, and 50? I remember now, you might have some missions that you haven't completed yet. Zetian Jiendi, who was standing behind Gohan, slowly lifted his foot and placed it on Gohan's back. Your Majesty, what is the meaning of this? Feeling Zetian Jiendi's humiliating kick, Gohan asked angrily. Nothing, I just want you to help me with one last mission. Zetian Jiendi's voice suddenly sounded creepy. Gohan sensed that something was wrong and immediately wanted to get up and run. But no matter how fast Gohan's reaction was, he was only a famed sword wielder. How could he be faster than an emperor sword wielder? Therefore, before Gohan could get up, Zetian Jiendi had already kicked Gohan into the hellish furnace of heaven and earth. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.